Surrealism, The Dream of the Real, written by Haya Vent, narrated by Kara Miller. Chapter 1, Introduction to Surrealism. Surrealism emerged in the early 20th century as a revolutionary cultural movement that sought to liberate the human imagination from the confines of reason and rationality. Rooted in the devastation of World War I and a growing disillusionment with traditional societal structures, Surrealism presented itself as a means to access deeper truths about the human experience. At its core, Surrealism was about embracing the irrational, the fantastical, and the dreamlike aspects of life, encouraging the exploration of the unconscious mind. The movement's genesis can be traced back to the Dada movement, which was a response to the senselessness of war and a rejection of conventional artistic norms. However, Surrealism sought something more than the nihilism of Dadaism. It aimed to harness the subconscious to transcend reality. French writer André Breton, often considered the leader of the movement, articulated its principles in the 1924 Surrealist Manifesto. In this manifesto, Breton defined Surrealism as pure psychic automatism, a process by which artists could express the thoughts of the unconscious without the interference of rational thought or moral judgment. Surrealism was not just an artistic style, it was a way of seeing and interacting with the world. The movement quickly gained traction across a variety of disciplines, including literature, visual arts, and film. Figures such as Salvador Dalí, Max Ernst, René Magritte, and Joan Miró redefined the boundaries of artistic expression. These artists created works that defied logic, often combining dreamlike imagery with startling juxtapositions. Their paintings, sculptures, and collages presented worlds that were both familiar and alien, filled with symbols and metaphors that invited personal interpretation. In addition to visual art, Surrealism had a profound impact on literature. Writers like Breton, Paul Éluard, and Louis Aragon embraced techniques such as automatic writing, where words flowed freely without conscious control, mirroring the unfiltered voice of the unconscious. This literary experimentation complemented the visual art, creating an integrated surrealist experience that aimed to break down the distinctions between different forms of creative expression. Surrealism also had a lasting connection with psychoanalysis, particularly the work of Sigmund Freud. Freud's theories on the unconscious, dreams, and the repressed mind provided a foundation for many surrealist ideas. Surrealists were deeply inspired by Freud's assertion that dreams could reveal hidden truths about the psyche, and they sought to make these hidden worlds tangible through their art and writings. Ultimately, Surrealism was a revolutionary movement that sought to explore the inner workings of the mind, dismantle societal conventions, and free human creativity from the restrictions of everyday reality. It was a movement that transformed not just art, but the very way we think about the nature of reality itself. Definition and origins of Surrealism. Surrealism is an artistic, literary, and intellectual movement that sought to challenge the boundaries of rational thought and explore the deeper, often irrational aspects of the human mind. The term surrealism itself was coined by French poet Guillaume Apollinaire in 1917, but it wasn't until the publication of André Breton's Surrealist Manifesto in 1924 that the movement began to solidify its theoretical framework and artistic identity. Surrealism is defined by its exploration of the unconscious mind, dreams, and the irrational, aiming to transcend reality by engaging with the subconscious and the fantastical. The origins of Surrealism can be traced to the disillusionment brought on by World War I, which left many artists and intellectuals questioning the values of rational thought and societal norms. The war had shattered traditional views of reason, order, and progress, leading to a fertile ground for new forms of artistic expression. In this context, Surrealism grew out of the Dada movement, a predecessor that rejected logic, reason, and the established conventions of art and society. While Dada focused on absurdity and negation, Surrealism sought to build upon these ideas by embracing the unconscious, dreams, and irrationality as a source of creative liberation. Breton, influenced by the psychoanalytic theories of Sigmund Freud, developed Surrealism as a means to access and express the inner workings of the mind. Freud's exploration of dreams and the unconscious suggested that these realms held profound insights into the nature of human experience, revealing desires, fears, and repressed emotions that were not always accessible through conscious thought. Surrealists adopted these ideas, using techniques such as automatic writing and spontaneous drawing to bypass the constraints of rational thought and tap directly into the unconscious. These methods allowed for the creation of art and literature that seemed to defy logic, often combining unrelated elements in startling ways to evoke the absurdities of the human psyche. Surrealism was not confined to any one medium, but spread across various artistic fields, including painting, sculpture, literature, and film. Key figures like Salvador Dali, Max Ernst, René Magritte, and Jean Miro embraced surrealist ideals, creating works that mixed dreamlike imagery with elements of the uncanny. The movement quickly gained international influence, attracting artists and intellectuals from around the world who were eager to explore the boundaries of the real and the imaginary. Thus, Surrealism emerged as a radical, transformative force in modern art and thought, reshaping how we understand creativity, reality, and the workings of the mind. Historical context: from Dada to Surrealism. The transition from Dada to Surrealism marks a critical shift in early 20th century art, as artists moved from an anti-art stance to a more focused exploration of the unconscious and irrational. The Dada movement, which emerged during and after World War I, was born out of frustration with the rationalist thinking that had led to the war's devastation. Dada artists rejected traditional notions of art, logic, and reason, embracing chaos, absurdity, and the breakdown of social norms. They sought to undermine established cultural values by producing works that were intentionally nonsensical, using techniques like ready-mades, collages, and nonsensical performances to challenge conventional aesthetics. Dada, however, was not intended as a long-term movement. Its nihilistic rejection of traditional artistic values left little room for the kind of structured exploration that could sustain a lasting artistic movement. By the early 1920s, many Dadaists began to move away from its anarchic ideals, seeking new ways to engage with the irrational while also providing a sense of creative purpose. This shift gave rise to Surrealism, which, unlike Dada, aimed to create a positive vision by tapping into the depths of the unconscious mind. Surrealism's philosophical and aesthetic roots were heavily influenced by Sigmund Freud's theories on the unconscious and dreams. While Dadaists had sought to liberate art from reason, Surrealists sought to delve into the hidden layers of the psyche, believing that exploring these realms could unlock new, profound artistic expressions. André Breton, the key figure behind Surrealism, was deeply influenced by Freud's ideas, particularly his assertion that dreams and unconscious thoughts reveal deeper truths about the human experience. In 1924, Breton formally declared Surrealism as a movement in his Surrealist Manifesto, which called for an art that was freed from the constraints of logic and embraced the power of dreams, fantasy, and irrationality. Surrealism was, in part, a response to the disillusionment and trauma of the post-war world. While Dada had been a direct reaction to the absurdity of the war, Surrealism sought to create a new reality by delving deeper into the psyche, where hidden truths could be discovered and expressed. Surrealists, therefore, took the rebellious spirit of Dada and channeled it into a more introspective exploration of the mind's hidden workings, paving the way for a more structured and profound artistic movement. This transition from the chaotic, anti-art stance of Dada to the more introspective, psychological focus of Surrealism helped to redefine the role of art in reflecting and reshaping the world. Key figures in Surrealism: André Breton, Salvador Dali, Max Ernst. Surrealism's evolution as a cultural movement can be largely attributed to the contributions of a few key figures whose work and ideas shaped its foundation and trajectory. Among these, André Breton, Salvador Dali, and Max Ernst stand out as pivotal artists and thinkers who not only defined Surrealism, but also helped push its boundaries. André Breton, often called the father of Surrealism, was a French poet and writer whose Surrealist Manifesto in 1924 formalized the movement's core principles. Breton was deeply influenced by the psychoanalytic theories of Sigmund Freud, particularly his ideas on the unconscious and dreams. He saw Surrealism as a way to access the unconscious mind, breaking free from the constraints of logic and rationality. Breton's own poetry and writings embodied these principles, using automatic writing to express unfiltered thoughts and feelings. As the central figure in the Surrealist group, he organized exhibitions, published journals, and mentored younger artists, establishing Surrealism as a cohesive movement that transcended national and artistic boundaries. Salvador Dali, one of the most iconic and provocative artists of the 20th century, is perhaps the most widely recognized figure associated with Surrealism. Dali's eccentric personality and flamboyant style became synonymous with Surrealism's dreamlike and often unsettling imagery. His paintings, such as The Persistence of Memory with its melting clocks, epitomize the Surrealist exploration of altered perceptions of time and space. Dali's ability to combine meticulous technique with bizarre, otherworldly visions made him a master of Surrealist painting. While Dali was closely aligned with the Surrealist movement in its early years, his later flirtations with other styles and his growing individualism led to tensions with Breton and other Surrealists. Nonetheless, Dali's contribution to the movement remains immense, influencing both Surrealist and mainstream art. Max Ernst, a German painter and sculptor, was another foundational figure in Surrealism. Known for his innovative techniques and experimentation with texture and form, Ernst helped to expand Surrealism into new visual territories. He was a pioneer in the use of frottage, rubbing textures from objects, and grattage, scraping paint off canvas, techniques that allowed him to uncover unexpected patterns and images from beneath the surface. Ernst's work often merged the fantastical with the grotesque, exploring themes of transformation and metamorphosis. His unsettling imagery and exploration of the unconscious made him a key member of the Surrealist group, and his influence extended beyond Surrealism, impacting the development of abstract art and later movements. Together, these three figures, Breton, Dali, and Ernst, helped shape Surrealism into a dynamic and multifaceted movement that sought to uncover the hidden truths of the human psyche through art, literature, and intellectual exploration. The Surrealist Manifesto. The Surrealist Manifesto, written by André Breton in 1924, stands as the defining document of the Surrealist movement, outlining its philosophical foundations and artistic goals. It declared Surrealism as a revolutionary new approach to both art and life, one that sought to break free from the constraints of rationality, tradition, and bourgeois society. At its heart, the manifesto embraced the unconscious mind, dreams, and irrationality as sources of untapped creativity, providing artists and writers with a means to access a deeper, more truthful reality beyond the surface of everyday life. Breton's manifesto was heavily influenced by the psychoanalytic theories of Sigmund Freud, particularly his ideas about the unconscious and the interpretative potential of dreams. Surrealism, as Breton described it, was pure psychic automatism, a technique of expression in which artists could bypass the influence of reason and will, allowing the unconscious mind to take control and shape the creative process. This concept was revolutionary because it proposed that the mind's spontaneous and uninhibited impulses held the key to understanding deeper truths about human nature and existence. For Breton, Surrealism was not just a style of art, but a mode of living. He saw it as an antidote to the rationalist and materialist ideologies that dominated Western society, which he believed had contributed to the chaos and devastation of World War I. In the manifesto, Breton argued that surrealism could liberate people from the oppressive forces of logic and convention, opening up new possibilities for personal and collective freedom. He called for a world in which the boundaries between the conscious and unconscious, the real and the imaginary, were dissolved, and in which dreams, fantasies, and irrational thoughts could be fully expressed without censorship. The manifesto also outlined key artistic and literary practices associated with surrealism, such as automatic writing, free association, and the use of bizarre, dreamlike imagery. Through these methods, surrealists sought to transcend the limitations of conventional thought and unlock the imagination's full potential. Breton's call to embrace the irrational and the unknown resonated with many artists and intellectuals, attracting a diverse group of followers who were eager to explore new ways of creating and experiencing art. The Surrealist Manifesto remains one of the most important texts in modern art and thought, encapsulating the movement's radical vision and its challenge to the status quo. It opened the door to a new realm of creative expression that continues to influence contemporary art and culture. Core themes and philosophy of surrealism. The core themes and philosophy of surrealism are rooted in the desire to explore and express the deeper realms of human consciousness. Surrealism, at its heart, seeks to transcend the limitations of rational thought and tap into the unconscious mind, a domain that, according to the movement's key thinkers, holds the true essence of human experience. Influenced by the psychoanalytic theories of Sigmund Freud, surrealism is grounded in the idea that the unconscious, through dreams, desires, and repressed thoughts, contains truths far more profound than those derived from logic or reason. As such, the movement's philosophy centered on liberating the mind from the constraints of conventional thinking. One of the central tenets of surrealism is the concept of pure psychic automatism. This refers to the practice of letting the unconscious mind express itself without interference from conscious control, allowing for spontaneous creation. This could be seen in various forms of art, such as automatic writing, where the writer produces text without editing or planning, and in visual art, where painters use techniques like automatic drawing to bypass deliberate thought. The idea was that this method could uncover deeper causes, more authentic insights into the self, which were obscured by the structures of rational thinking and social conditioning. Another fundamental theme in surrealism is the exploration of dreams and the blending of reality with the fantastical. Surrealists believed that dreams revealed hidden truths about the psyche, offering a direct connection to the unconscious mind. In their artwork and literature, the juxtaposition of dreamlike imagery with real-world elements challenged viewers to reconsider their perception of reality. Surrealism is filled with strange, distorted, and often unsettling depictions, where the boundaries between the real and the unreal, the logical and the illogical, are intentionally blurred. These surreal images were not meant to be understood in a literal sense, but were instead invitations to explore the symbolic meanings and subconscious associations they evoked. The Surrealists also embraced irrationality, considering it not as a flaw, but as a vital aspect of human existence. They rejected the dominance of reason and the materialistic ideologies of the time, especially in the wake of the devastation caused by World War I. Surrealism, in this regard, became an act of rebellion against the rationalist foundations of Western society, advocating for a new understanding of reality that embraced chaos, uncertainty, and the unknown. Ultimately, surrealism was not merely an art movement, but a comprehensive worldview that aimed to break down the barriers between the conscious and unconscious, reality and imagination, reason and madness. It proposed a radical transformation in the way people viewed themselves, their world, and their creative potential. Chapter 2: The Surrealist Aesthetic. The Surrealist aesthetic is defined by its embrace of the irrational, the dreamlike, and the uncanny. Surrealism sought to break free from the constraints of traditional artistic forms, pushing the boundaries of what could be considered art. This was done by engaging deeply with the unconscious mind, a domain that was seen as holding the key to creativity and truth. At its core, the Surrealist aesthetic rejected the rules of logic and reason that had governed art for centuries, instead celebrating spontaneity, chance, and the element of surprise. One of the most striking features of the Surrealist aesthetic is the use of dream imagery. Surrealist works often depict strange, distorted scenes that evoke the feeling of a dream or a nightmare. These images are both familiar and alien, drawing from the real world but rearranging it in unexpected ways. In paintings, for example, objects may appear in impossible combinations, such as a melting clock, a floating fish, or a person with an object for a head. These juxtapositions create a sense of unease, yet they also invite the viewer to explore deeper meanings beyond the surface. The dreamlike quality of surrealism makes it a powerful tool for exploring the subconscious, where logic no longer applies and emotions and desires take precedence. Another key element of the surrealist aesthetic is the focus on automatism, a method by which artists could bypass conscious control to allow the unconscious mind to take over. This technique was central to both visual art and literature, with surrealist artists using automatic drawing, painting, and writing to produce works that seemed spontaneous and unfiltered. The process of automatism was seen as a direct link to the unconscious, where true artistic expression could emerge without the constraints of rational thought. It was an act of liberation for both the artist and the viewer, as it opened up new realms of creativity that were previously inaccessible. Surrealism also embraced the juxtaposition of the everyday with the bizarre. Ordinary objects or scenes were often placed in unfamiliar or disorienting contexts, creating a sense of mystery and wonder. This could range from the use of incongruous imagery, like a human figure with the head of an animal, to the recontextualization of everyday objects in new, often surreal settings. By reimagining the mundane, surrealism encouraged a reevaluation of reality itself, suggesting that reality is not as fixed or stable as it might seem. In essence, the surrealist aesthetic was a bold departure from traditional artistic conventions, one that sought to explore and express the deeper, irrational forces of the human psyche. Through dreamlike imagery, automatic techniques, and the subversion of everyday reality, surrealism opened up new ways of seeing and experiencing the world. The power of the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind holds a central position in surrealist thought, serving as the gateway to creativity, insight, and a deeper understanding of the self. Surrealists were profoundly influenced by Sigmund Freud's theories on the unconscious, particularly his ideas about dreams, repressed desires, and the hidden motivations that shape human behavior. According to Freud, much of human thought and action is driven by unconscious forces that are not immediately accessible to our conscious minds. Surrealism sought to tap into this vast, hidden realm to unleash new creative possibilities and access a truer, more liberated form of expression. For surrealists, the unconscious was a wellspring of artistic inspiration. It was seen as a source of raw, untapped potential, where irrational thoughts, desires, and symbols could surface free from the constraints of societal norms or logical reasoning. This approach was fundamentally revolutionary in the context of early 20th century art, which had largely adhered to rationalist ideals and technical precision. Surrealism rejected these conventions, instead choosing to explore the uncharted territories of the mind, where thought could flow freely without censorship. One of the primary methods used to access the unconscious was automatic writing. This technique involved writing without premeditation, allowing the hand to move across the page without any conscious direction, creating a stream of words that would reveal hidden thoughts and emotions. Similarly, automatic drawing and painting encouraged artists to let their hands guide their brushes or pencils. bypassing the rational thought process and channeling the unconscious directly onto the canvas. The result was often a spontaneous and abstract work that was considered more authentic and representative of the artist's inner world than more controlled, planned pieces. Dreams played a significant role in the Surrealist exploration of the unconscious. Surrealist art and literature often depicted scenes that resembled the illogical, fragmented, and bizarre nature of dreams, capturing their strange juxtapositions and emotional intensity. Through this approach, Surrealists sought to challenge conventional perceptions of reality, presenting a new form of art that was not bound by the rules of the conscious mind. Dreams, in the Surrealist view, were a direct reflection of the unconscious, and were therefore seen as a vital tool for understanding both the individual and the collective human experience. In embracing the power of the unconscious, Surrealism offered a radical departure from traditional art forms. It celebrated irrationality, fantasy, and the unknown, proposing that true freedom could only be found by delving deep into the hidden recesses of the mind. By tapping into the unconscious, Surrealists sought to reveal new dimensions of reality and experience, creating works that continue to resonate with audiences for their emotional depth and raw authenticity. Dream imagery and symbolism. Dream imagery and symbolism are at the very heart of Surrealist art, as they represent the movement's deep engagement with the unconscious mind and its search for deeper truths hidden beneath the surface of reality. Surrealists were inspired by the work of Sigmund Freud, who proposed that dreams were a direct expression of unconscious thoughts and desires. For the Surrealists, dreams were not merely irrational or nonsensical experiences, but a potent means of accessing profound psychological and emotional insights. They believed that by drawing upon the strange and symbolic language of dreams, they could tap into a deeper, more authentic reality that transcended the constraints of everyday life. The dreamlike quality of Surrealist art is evident in its use of bizarre, fantastical imagery. Objects and scenes are often depicted in ways that defy logic and reason, with everyday items presented in unfamiliar, often disorienting contexts. This approach aims to mirror the illogical and fragmented nature of dreams, where familiar objects and people can take on new, surreal forms. In works by artists like Salvador Dalí, René Magritte, and Max Ernst, we encounter distorted landscapes, floating objects, and strange juxtapositions that evoke the sense of being in a dream. These surreal scenes invite the viewer to step outside the limitations of waking consciousness and explore the limitless possibilities of the unconscious. Symbolism plays a significant role in this dream imagery. For the Surrealists, symbols were a means of communicating the hidden, often repressed emotions and desires that reside in the unconscious. These symbols could range from seemingly simple objects, like clocks, eyes, or animals, to more complex and abstract representations. Each symbol was laden with personal and collective meaning, allowing the viewer to interpret the artwork in a way that resonated with their own psyche. Surrealist artists often used these symbols to explore themes of transformation, sexuality, death, and the passage of time, universal concerns that could be better understood through the lens of dream imagery. The Surrealists sought to break down the boundaries between waking life and the world of dreams, proposing that the subconscious could offer a truer, more liberated vision of reality. In this sense, dream imagery and symbolism were not just artistic tools, but radical means of challenging the accepted norms of society, perception, and reality itself. By embracing the irrational and the symbolic, Surrealist artists created works that were not only visually arresting, but also deeply psychological and emotionally resonant, offering viewers a glimpse into the hidden dimensions of the mind. Automatism and free association. Automatism and free association are two core techniques within Surrealism that allowed artists and writers to bypass the constraints of conscious thought, tapping directly into the unconscious mind. These methods were central to the Surrealist belief that true artistic expression could only emerge when the artist relinquished control, allowing irrational thoughts, spontaneous actions, and unfiltered emotions to flow freely. Both techniques were influenced by the psychoanalytic theories of Sigmund Freud, who emphasized the importance of unconscious processes in revealing repressed desires, memories, and hidden truths. By embracing automatism and free association, Surrealists sought to create art that was uninhibited, liberated from societal norms, and deeply connected to the inner workings of the mind. Automatism, in its various forms, was the primary method used by Surrealist artists to create works that were spontaneous and unpremeditated. The technique was seen as a direct link to the unconscious, where the artist allowed their hand or mind to move freely without interference from rational control. One common form of automatism was automatic drawing, in which an artist would let their pencil or brush move across the page without conscious direction, producing shapes and patterns that were not intentionally planned. The result was often abstract, mysterious, and open to interpretation, reflecting the chaotic and unpredictable nature of the unconscious mind. Automatic writing, in literature, followed a similar approach, where writers allowed words to spill onto the page without structure or preconceived ideas, trusting that the unconscious would guide them toward a deeper creative expression. Free association, another key technique in Surrealism, was heavily influenced by Freud's method of dream interpretation. Freud believed that by freely associating words or images, individuals could access repressed thoughts and desires that were buried in the unconscious mind. In Surrealist practice, free association became a tool for both artistic creation and intellectual exploration. Writers, poets, and artists would allow a stream of consciousness to flow without judgment, often producing unexpected and disjointed connections between words, images, or objects. This process helped to break down the rigid boundaries of language and meaning, creating space for new, more liberated forms of expression. Both automatism and free association offered Surrealists a path to access a more authentic, raw form of creativity. Rather than adhering to conventional artistic techniques or narrative structures, these methods encouraged a form of artistic rebellion that embraced chance, intuition, and the irrational. Through these techniques, Surrealism opened the door to new forms of artistic expression that rejected the limitations of rational thought, offering a profound exploration of the unconscious mind and its potential for creative revelation. The role of the subconscious in art. The role of the subconscious in Surrealist art is fundamental to understanding the movement's transformative approach to creativity. Surrealism sought to unlock the deepest recesses of the human mind, believing that the subconscious held the key to authentic artistic expression. Artists and writers aligned with the Surrealist movement, such as André Breton, Salvador Dalí, and Max Ernst, were profoundly influenced by Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theories, which emphasized the importance of the subconscious in shaping thoughts, emotions, and behavior. Surrealists believed that by accessing the subconscious, they could reveal deeper truths about human nature, uncover hidden desires, and offer new perspectives on reality itself. Unlike traditional art, which often focused on realistic depictions of the external world, Surrealism sought to depict the inner workings of the mind, embracing the irrational, the dreamlike, and the fantastical. The subconscious was seen as a space where repressed thoughts, memories, and desires resided, elements that were often suppressed or ignored by rational thought. By bringing these elements to the surface, Surrealist artists hoped to create works that were more reflective of the complex and multifaceted nature of human experience. This approach allowed them to explore the realms of fantasy, symbolism, and the uncanny, creating art that was not bound by the limitations of logic or reason. The subconscious played a key role in Surrealist techniques such as automatism, where artists engaged in spontaneous, unplanned creation to bypass the conscious mind. By relinquishing control and letting the hand or mind act freely, Surrealists believed they could tap directly into the subconscious, uncovering forms and images that were beyond the reach of conscious thought. Automatic writing, automatic drawing, and other forms of non-rational expression were seen as direct channels to the subconscious, enabling artists to reveal the hidden dimensions of their psyche. These techniques allowed for the creation of works that were deeply personal, yet resonant with universal themes of desire, fear, and transformation. Additionally, the use of dream imagery and symbolism in surrealist art reflected the influence of the subconscious. Dreams, according to Freud, were a manifestation of the subconscious mind, where repressed wishes and unresolved conflicts found expression. Surrealist artists sought to represent the strange, fragmented, and illogical nature of dreams, incorporating surreal landscapes and symbolic imagery to evoke the inner turmoil and desires of the subconscious. Through these representations, Surrealism allowed viewers to experience a new, unfiltered form of reality, one that was shaped not by the conscious mind, but by the hidden forces of the subconscious. In essence, the subconscious became a vital source of inspiration and exploration in Surrealist art. By delving into this uncharted territory, Surrealists challenged conventional notions of reality and art, offering a glimpse into the powerful and untapped potential of the human mind. Surrealism's influence on visual arts. Surrealism had a profound and lasting impact on the visual arts, shaping the way artists approached creativity, perception, and representation in the 20th century and beyond. The movement's core goal of exploring the unconscious, irrational, and dreamlike elements of human experience led to groundbreaking techniques and visual styles that continue to influence contemporary art. Surrealism's embrace of spontaneity, chance, and the liberation of the mind from traditional norms allowed artists to break free from the constraints of realistic representation and conventional artistic methods. This opened up new ways of thinking about the world, the self, and the relationship between reality and imagination. One of the most significant contributions of Surrealism to visual arts was its focus on creating dreamlike, fantastical imagery. Artists such as Salvador Dalí, René Magritte, and Max Ernst blended the familiar with the bizarre, crafting scenes that merged reality with the surreal. Dalí's iconic melting clocks in The Persistence of Memory, or Magritte's surreal landscapes populated with floating objects became symbols of the movement's ability to turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. Surrealist art often featured distorted or fragmented imagery, rendering the visible world strange and unfamiliar, while also offering a visual representation of the subconscious mind. These unusual and unsettling images invited viewers to reconsider their perceptions of reality and question the boundaries between the conscious and unconscious, the real and the imagined. Surrealism also introduced innovative artistic techniques that reshaped the visual language of modern art. The practice of automatism, for example, encouraged artists to relinquish conscious control and allow their subconscious to guide their creative process. This technique was used in both painting and drawing, resulting in spontaneous, abstract compositions that revealed the inner workings of the mind. Techniques like frottage, rubbing textures, and grattage, scraping paint off the canvas, allowed artists like Max Ernst to create textured, layered works that suggested hidden images and forms, further tapping into the power of the unconscious. Moreover, Surrealism's focus on symbolism, psychological depth, and the exploration of personal and collective dreams pushed the boundaries of narrative in visual art. The movement encouraged artists to use symbolic imagery to express inner emotional states, unspoken desires, and universal themes like love, death, and transformation. These layers of meaning created complex, multidimensional works that invited interpretation and reflection. The legacy of Surrealism's influence on visual arts can be seen in the works of later movements such as abstract expressionism, pop art, and even contemporary conceptual art. Its impact is also evident in graphic design, film, and photography, where the manipulation of imagery and dreamlike scenes continue to be explored. Surrealism's ability to challenge conventional thinking and open up new avenues of creativity has ensured its enduring presence in the world of art. Chapter 3: Surrealism and Literature. Surrealism's influence on literature was as profound as its impact on the visual arts, bringing about a revolution in the way writers approached language, structure, and meaning. In literature, surrealists sought to express the unconscious mind, break free from conventional syntax and narrative structures, and engage with the irrational and the dreamlike. Writers like André Breton, Louis Aragon, and Paul Éluard sought to reject the constraints of logic and reason that had dominated literature for centuries, instead embracing spontaneity, ambiguity, and the rawness of the subconscious. This literary movement aligned with the surrealist aim to explore deeper layers of human consciousness and to communicate experiences beyond the reach of rational thought. One of the most significant literary techniques introduced by surrealism was automatic writing, a method of writing that allowed the unconscious mind to guide the writer without any premeditated structure or direction. This technique was intended to bypass the limitations of conscious thought and give rise to pure, unfiltered expression. Writers would let their words flow freely, allowing thoughts, images, and emotions to emerge without conscious censorship. The resulting work often had a fragmented, dreamlike quality, marked by unexpected connections and a lack of logical progression. Through automatic writing, surrealist writers hoped to tap into the hidden recesses of the mind and unlock the unspoken truths that lay beyond the surface of everyday life. In addition to automatic writing, surrealist literature also embraced free association, a technique in which writers allowed their thoughts to flow without concern for linearity or structure. Free association encouraged the free-flowing connection of words, ideas, and images, helping writers access the irrational, unconscious parts of the mind. This technique was particularly influential in poetry, where the rhythmic and sound-based qualities of language could evoke emotional and psychological states. Through free association, surrealists sought to reveal the complexities of human desire, fear, and experience, often creating poetic imagery that was deeply symbolic and open to interpretation. The role of dreams and the subconscious was central to surrealist literature as well. Much like in visual art, surrealist writers used the dream as a metaphor for the unconscious mind, where repressed emotions and hidden desires could emerge. In works such as Breton's Nadja or Aragon's The Parisian Peasant, surrealist writers blurred the line between reality and dream, inviting readers into a world where the boundaries of the real and the imagined were fluid. The use of dreamlike sequences, illogical plot structures, and vivid, often bizarre imagery allowed surrealist literature to transcend traditional storytelling, offering a new way to understand human consciousness and experience. Surrealism in literature was not simply an artistic movement, but a philosophical and psychological exploration of the mind. It challenged readers to question the nature of reality, language, and thought, while offering new avenues for creative and intellectual expression. The impact of surrealist literature continues to be felt today, influencing contemporary writers who embrace the unconscious, the irrational, and the dreamlike in their works. Surrealist writers: André Breton, Paul Éluard, Louis Aragon. André Breton, Paul Éluard, and Louis Aragon are three of the most important figures in the development of surrealist literature, each contributing unique elements to the movement's radical approach to writing. While they shared a common interest in the unconscious, dreams, and the irrational, their individual works and contributions helped shape surrealism into a multifaceted literary force. André Breton, often considered the founder and leader of the surrealist movement, was instrumental in defining surrealism as both an artistic and philosophical movement. His most famous work, The Surrealist Manifesto, 1924, outlined the goals of the movement, emphasizing the liberation of thought from the constraints of logic and reason. Breton's writings sought to explore the deepest recesses of the mind, particularly the unconscious, through methods like automatic writing and free association. His novel, Nadja, is one of the most well-known examples of surrealist literature, blurring the line between fiction and reality while exploring themes of love, madness, and the power of dreams. Breton's influence on surrealist literature cannot be overstated, as his philosophical outlook on the potential of the subconscious shaped the direction of both his own work and the broader movement. Paul Eluard, another central figure in surrealist literature, was a poet known for his passionate exploration of love, desire, and the unconscious. His poetry often depicted surreal and dreamlike imagery, where the boundaries between the real and the imaginary were fluid. Eluard's early work, such as Capital of Pain, 1926, contained hauntingly beautiful poems that reflected the emotional intensity and symbolic depth of surrealism. He was particularly known for his ability to express universal themes, such as love, freedom, and suffering, through a highly imaginative and abstract use of language. Unlike Breton, Eluard's poetry maintained a more lyrical and romantic quality, often invoking themes of personal longing and social idealism. Louis Aragon, initially associated with the Dada movement before fully embracing surrealism, was a writer, poet, and novelist who became one of the movement's most prominent literary figures. Aragon's work often incorporated surreal and fantastical elements to convey the complexities of modern life. His novel, The Parisian Peasant, 1926, is a prime example of how Aragon combined surrealist techniques with a deep interest in psychological exploration and the urban landscape. Aragon's poetry also dealt with themes of revolutionary politics, love, and the power of imagination, yet his work was less abstract than that of some other surrealists, often offering a more direct narrative approach. Over time, Aragon became an advocate for using surrealism to address social issues, bridging the gap between avant-garde art and political activism. Together, these three writers were instrumental in pushing the boundaries of literature, blending philosophy, psychology, and art to create works that challenged traditional notions of reality and language. Their exploration of the unconscious, dreams, and the irrational continues to influence writers and thinkers today. Literary techniques, automatic writing, exquisite corpse. Automatic writing and the exquisite corpse are two of the most significant literary techniques developed by the Surrealists, both designed to bypass the rational conscious mind in order to access the unconscious and unlock a more authentic, unfiltered form of expression. These techniques embodied Surrealism's commitment to spontaneity, chance, and the liberation of thought from societal constraints, offering new ways to explore the complexities of the human psyche and creative process. Automatic writing, one of the cornerstones of Surrealist literary practice, involved writing without conscious control or premeditation. Writers using this technique would allow their hand to move freely across the page, allowing their thoughts, images, and feelings to emerge without filtering or editing. The goal was to bypass the intellect and the constraints of logical thought, tapping directly into the unconscious mind. This process often resulted in fragmented, disjointed, and surreal pieces of writing, where words and ideas appeared in unexpected sequences, revealing new connections and hidden meanings. André Breton, one of the key figures of the Surrealist movement, championed automatic writing as a powerful tool for accessing deeper truths and subverting the rules of conventional narrative. For Surrealists, automatic writing represented a radical departure from traditional literary forms, as it allowed the writer to move beyond conscious intention and let the unconscious take the lead. The Exquisite Corpse is another innovative Surrealist literary game that embodied the principles of chance, collaboration, and unconscious expression. The Exquisite Corpse was a collaborative exercise in which multiple participants contributed to a text without knowing what the others had written. Each person would write a part of the story or poem, fold the paper to conceal their contribution, and pass it to the next participant, who would continue the work based on the final words or phrases they could see. The result was a disjointed, surreal narrative that combined disparate voices and ideas, often producing unexpected, absurd, and sometimes eerie combinations. This technique, which also extended to visual art, was a playful yet profound exploration of how chance and collective creativity could result in a unique, unpredictable work. It highlighted the surrealist belief that true creativity often arose from moments of randomness and spontaneity, rather than from conscious effort. Both automatic writing and the exquisite corpse reflected the surrealist pursuit of freedom, spontaneity, and the exploration of the unconscious. These techniques challenge the conventions of traditional literature, encouraging writers to embrace irrationality and chance in the creative process. By engaging in these methods, surrealists sought to produce works that were more reflective of the complex, multifaceted nature of the mind, giving rise to literary forms that continue to influence contemporary writers and artists today. The Surrealist Poetics of the Everyday. The surrealist poetics of the everyday represents a radical shift in how artists and writers perceive and engage with the ordinary aspects of daily life. Surrealists sought to find poetry and beauty in the mundane, recognizing that the everyday world, often seen as banal and repetitive, held hidden depths of meaning and unconscious significance. They believed that by reimagining everyday objects, moments, and experiences through the lens of the surreal, they could uncover new interpretations of reality and the human experience. This approach was rooted in the movement's broader goal of challenging conventional perceptions and breaking free from the limitations of rational thought. The Surrealists rejected the traditional boundaries between the extraordinary and the ordinary, instead seeking to infuse everyday life with the same sense of wonder, mystery, and symbolism found in dreams or fantasies. Objects like clocks, shoes, or furniture, often considered mundane or utilitarian, were presented in unusual contexts or combined in strange juxtapositions that defied logic. By shifting the focus from the functional to the imaginative, surrealists transformed these ordinary objects into symbols that resonated with the unconscious mind, reflecting deeper psychological and emotional truths. This transformation of the everyday was a powerful means of revealing the surreal potential inherent in the world around us. The surrealist poetics of the everyday also extended to language itself. Writers like Paul Éluard and Louis Aragon employed ordinary language to create extraordinary effects. Rather than relying on elaborate or flowery descriptions, surrealist poets sought to express profound ideas through simple, accessible language, allowing the everyday speech of ordinary people to become a vehicle for surreal and poetic expression. This approach not only democratized poetry, but also highlighted the potential for poetic meaning to emerge from the most ordinary encounters and objects. In this sense, the surrealists believed that the everyday could be seen as a continuous source of inspiration, offering a limitless well of material for creative exploration. Additionally, the surrealists were drawn to the idea of chance and randomness in everyday life. In a world governed by routine and predictability, they sought to inject the unexpected, often allowing for the intrusion of chance occurrences or sudden disruptive events. This could be seen in both visual art and literature, where unplanned elements, such as the random arrangement of objects or the free-flowing associations in writing, mirrored the unpredictability and irrationality of the unconscious mind. For surrealists, this made the everyday an exciting and fertile ground for the exploration of the unknown and the unimagined. In essence, the surrealist poetics of the everyday invited people to look beyond the surface of ordinary life and recognize the surreal potential that exists in the most familiar and overlooked aspects of existence. By embracing the everyday as a source of poetic inspiration, surrealists not only transformed art and literature, but also offered a new way of seeing the world, a way that blurred the boundaries between the ordinary and the extraordinary, the real and the imagined. Surrealism's impact on modern literature. Surrealism's influence on modern literature is profound, continuing to shape the way writers approach language, narrative, and the subconscious mind. Emerging in the early 20th century, Surrealism sought to challenge conventional ideas of reality, embracing the irrational, the dreamlike, and the unconscious. Writers aligned with the movement, such as André Breton, Paul Éluard, and Louis Aragon, developed literary techniques like automatic writing and free association, which sought to bypass logical reasoning and tap directly into the deeper layers of the psyche. This experimental approach to language and storytelling paved the way for future generations of writers to explore new forms of expression and challenge the constraints of traditional literary forms. One of the most significant ways Surrealism impacted modern literature was through its embrace of the subconscious. By drawing inspiration from the ideas of psychoanalysis, particularly the work of Sigmund Freud, Surrealists sought to uncover the hidden motivations, desires, and fears that shape human behavior. Writers began to use their works as vehicles for exploring the inner workings of the mind, creating characters and narratives that reflected the complexity and irrationality of the human psyche. This exploration of inner consciousness paved the way for later literary movements like existentialism and postmodernism, which similarly questioned the nature of reality, identity, and perception. Another key contribution of Surrealism to modern literature was the movement's embrace of nonlinear, fragmented storytelling. Surrealist writers often abandoned traditional narrative structures in favor of disjointed, associative sequences that mimicked the unpredictable flow of thoughts and dreams. This experimental approach to structure can be seen in works by authors such as William S. Burroughs, whose Naked Lunch, 1959, employs a nonlinear, fragmented style that reflects surrealist techniques. The fragmented narrative became a hallmark of postmodern literature, as writers like Thomas Pynchon and David Foster Wallace used similar techniques to challenge linear storytelling and the notion of a cohesive, stable narrative. Furthermore, Surrealism's focus on the absurd and the irrational provided inspiration for later literary movements that sought to confront the absurdities of human existence. The theater of the absurd, for instance, was heavily influenced by Surrealism's focus on the breakdown of logic and reason. Playwrights like Samuel Beckett and Eugene Ionesco adopted elements of Surrealism in their works, using absurd situations and fragmented dialogue to explore existential themes. In addition to narrative techniques, Surrealism's emphasis on the power of the unconscious mind also influenced modern poetry. Poets like Allen Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac, part of the Beat generation, adopted surrealist methods of free association and automatic writing to create poetry that was spontaneous, raw, and liberated from traditional forms. Ultimately, Surrealism's impact on modern literature is vast, leaving an enduring legacy in the way writers experiment with form, meaning, and the exploration of the human mind. The movement's challenge to conventional boundaries and its embrace of the irrational continues to inspire and influence writers across genres. Chapter 4: Surrealism in Visual Art. Surrealism in visual art was one of the most striking expressions of the movement's radical departure from traditional forms of representation. Emerging in the early 1920s, Surrealist artists sought to challenge the constraints of logic, reason, and rationality in favor of exploring the unconscious, dreams, and the irrational. Influenced by the ideas of Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, as well as the earlier Dada movement, Surrealist artists aimed to represent the deeper layers of the human experience, including repressed desires, fears, and fantasies, through unexpected and often bizarre imagery. One of the defining characteristics of Surrealist visual art is its blending of reality and dreamlike states. Artists like Salvador Dali, René Magritte, and Max Ernst employed techniques that transformed everyday objects into strange, otherworldly scenes. Dali's works, such as The Persistence of Memory, feature iconic, distorted images like melting clocks and desolate landscapes, evoking a sense of time and space that feels detached from ordinary experience. Magritte's famous painting The Son of Man presents a figure in a bowler hat with his face obscured by a floating apple, creating an unsettling contrast between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Through these surreal juxtapositions, artists sought to blur the line between the conscious and the unconscious, between reality and the imagined, forcing viewers to question the nature of perception itself. Surrealist visual artists were also deeply influenced by the practice of automatism, a technique that encouraged spontaneity and unconscious expression. The use of automatism in painting, as pioneered by artists like John Miro and André Masson, involved the free-flowing application of paint, often without a predetermined plan or design. This technique allowed the artist to bypass conscious control, allowing the subconscious mind to guide the creative process. The resulting works were often abstract, filled with symbolic shapes, organic forms, and chaotic movements that captured the essence of the unconscious mind. Another key element of surrealist visual art was the use of collage and assemblage. Artists like Max Ernst and Hannah Höch incorporated found objects and fragments of materials into their works, creating new meanings by recombining elements in unexpected ways. These collages, which often included disjointed images or cut out parts of photographs, reflected the surrealists' interest in chance and transformation. By assembling disparate elements, surrealists were able to challenge the viewer's expectations and push the boundaries of what art could represent. The surrealist movement also had a lasting influence on photography. Artists like Man Ray and Lee Miller used photography to capture dreamlike, mysterious images, experimenting with techniques such as double exposure, solarization, and altered prints. These photographs were not meant to document reality, but rather to create visual metaphors for the subconscious, often employing unusual perspectives and lighting to evoke an eerie or surreal atmosphere. In conclusion, surrealism in visual art was marked by its exploration of the unconscious, its challenge to traditional artistic conventions, and its ability to provoke new ways of seeing the world. Surrealist artists used a variety of innovative techniques, from dreamlike imagery to spontaneous automatism, to create works that continue to challenge and inspire viewers today. Through their subversion of reality, these artists invited us to question our perceptions of the world, offering a glimpse into the mysterious, irrational, and often unsettling depths of the human mind. The use of dreams and nightmares in art. In surrealist art, dreams and nightmares became central themes for exploring the unconscious mind, offering an avenue for expressing deep-seated fears, desires, and psychological complexities. Influenced by the psychoanalytic theories of Sigmund Freud, who argued that dreams revealed hidden aspects of the psyche, surrealists sought to capture the elusive and often irrational quality of dreams and nightmares through their visual works. This exploration of the dream world allowed artists to break free from the constraints of reality and engage with a realm where logic and reason no longer held sway. Dream imagery in surrealism was not merely about depicting fantastical or otherworldly scenes, but about reflecting the deeper emotional and psychological states of the individual. Artists like Salvador Dalí and René Magritte frequently incorporated dreamlike elements into their paintings, creating visual metaphors for the unconscious. Dalí's iconic The Persistence of Memory, with its melting clocks and distorted landscapes, evokes a sense of distorted time and reality, reminiscent of the fluid and often illogical nature of dreams. The strange and ambiguous quality of these works was meant to encourage the viewer to question the boundaries between the waking world and the dream world, inviting them into a space where familiar objects and symbols took on new and unsettling meanings. Nightmares, on the other hand, allowed surrealist artists to confront the darker aspects of the unconscious. By delving into the terrifying, irrational, and sometimes grotesque aspects of dreams, artists were able to depict the hidden fears, anxieties, and repressed emotions that often emerge during sleep. For instance, Max Ernst's The Forest, 1935, with its eerie, otherworldly atmosphere and strange, monstrous figures, evokes a sense of dread and discomfort, tapping into the nightmare experience. Similarly, Francisco Goya's The Sleep of Reason Produces Monsters, 1799, though predating surrealism, explored the idea that when reason is suspended, irrational forces, represented by dark, monstrous creatures, emerge from the unconscious. Nightmares in Surrealist art also had a political dimension, reflecting anxieties about war, social instability, and the potential for human violence. These works often combine the personal and the collective, blurring the boundaries between individual fear and broader societal tensions. Surrealists used the nightmare as a means of confronting the emotional toll of the contemporary world, suggesting that society's collective unconscious was deeply troubled by the violent and chaotic events of the time. By incorporating both dreams and nightmares into their art, Surrealists sought to explore the full spectrum of human experience, from the joyful to the terrifying, the beautiful to the grotesque. These works pushed the boundaries of visual art, offering a means of accessing the hidden recesses of the mind and challenging traditional notions of what was considered rational or real. Through the dreamlike and nightmarish imagery, Surrealist artists provided a window into the unconscious, revealing the power of the irrational to shape human experience and creativity. Iconic Surrealist paintings: Dali, Magritte, Ernst, Moreau. The Surrealist movement is renowned for its remarkable contributions to the world of visual art, with some of the most iconic works emerging from artists such as Salvador Dali, René Magritte, Max Ernst, and Joan Moreau. Each of these artists brought a unique approach to Surrealism, creating timeless works that continue to captivate viewers and challenge conventional perceptions of reality. Salvador Dali is perhaps the most famous Surrealist artist, known for his meticulous technique and bizarre, dreamlike imagery. His iconic painting, The Persistence of Memory, 1931, with its melting clocks draped across barren landscapes, is a masterful exploration of the fluidity of time. The distorted, almost elastic clocks evoke the strange, timeless quality of dreams, where the rules of reality are suspended. Dali's work often combined precise realism with elements of fantasy and absurdity, producing a disorienting effect that forced the viewer to question the nature of perception and existence. In addition to The Persistence of Memory, Dali's The Elephants, 1948, and The Sacrament of the Last Supper, 1955, exemplify his ability to blend religious iconography with surreal imagery, creating a haunting and unsettling atmosphere. René Magritte's work, known for its cerebral approach to surrealism, frequently explored the relationship between objects and the meanings we assign to them. His painting, The Son of Man, 1964, featuring a man in a bowler hat with his face obscured by a floating apple, challenges the viewer's expectations of reality and identity. Magritte's art often played with the boundaries between the visible and the hidden, as seen in works like The Treachery of Images, 1928 to 1929, which depicts a pipe with the caption, "Ceci n'est pas une pipe," "This is not a pipe." Through these seemingly simple yet provocative images, Magritte questioned the nature of representation and the limitations of language, inviting viewers to reconsider their assumptions about reality. Max Ernst, a pioneer of both Surrealism and Dada, was known for his inventive use of techniques such as frottage and grattage, which involved creating textures and patterns by rubbing or scraping surfaces. His painting The Elephant Celebes, 1921, is a striking example of his exploration of the subconscious through strange, dreamlike imagery. The figure of the elephant, depicted in an unnatural, mechanical form, is surrounded by surreal and ambiguous symbols, creating a sense of disorientation. Ernst's work often merged the fantastical with the mechanical, reflecting the tensions between nature and the industrial world, as well as the inner workings of the unconscious. Joan Moreau, known for his abstract and playful approach to surrealism, brought a sense of whimsy and spontaneity to his work. His painting, The Tilled Field, 1923 to 1924, combines organic shapes and bold colors with a sense of childlike simplicity, yet beneath the surface, it carries deep symbolic meaning. Miraut's use of biomorphic forms and vibrant colors brought a sense of freedom and exploration to surrealist art, emphasizing the importance of intuition and imagination. His work often blurs the line between the abstract and the figurative, creating a visual language that invites the viewer into a world of pure possibility. These iconic works by Dali, Magritte, Ernst, and Miro not only define the Surrealist movement, but also continue to influence contemporary art and visual culture. Each artist, with their unique vision and approach, contributed to the movement's lasting legacy, challenging the boundaries of art and the viewer's understanding of reality. Through their dreamlike, fantastical imagery, these artists helped to expand the possibilities of what art could express, inviting audiences to venture into the irrational and explore the depths of the subconscious mind. Collage and the juxtaposition of the unlikely. In Surrealist art, collage became a key technique for exploring the unconscious mind and challenging conventional notions of reality. By combining disparate elements from different sources, Surrealist artists created works that disrupted the viewer's sense of logic, presenting familiar objects in strange and unexpected contexts. This technique, which often involved the cutting and pasting of images from magazines, newspapers, and other printed materials, allowed artists to assemble new, sometimes absurd combinations that invited deeper reflection on the nature of perception and meaning. The process of creating a collage was inherently experimental and spontaneous, embodying the Surrealist belief that chance and randomness could reveal hidden truths about the human psyche. The use of collage in Surrealism was closely tied to the movement's fascination with the unconscious. By bringing together unrelated images, Surrealists sought to bypass the constraints of rational thought and engage directly with the deeper, irrational aspects of the mind. For example, Max Ernst, one of the pioneers of the collage technique, employed it to explore themes of fantasy, mythology, and the unconscious. His work, The Forest, 1935, which incorporates a collage of fragmented organic forms, creates a sense of mystery and unease. The fragmented nature of the collage echoes the fractured reality of the unconscious mind, where images and symbols do not follow conventional logic, but instead emerge in unpredictable ways. The juxtaposition of unlikely elements in collage also served as a means of subverting traditional notions of representation. By placing objects in unfamiliar relationships to one another, Surrealists challenged the viewer's expectations and forced them to question the nature of reality itself. One of the most famous practitioners of this technique, the artist Hannah Hoke, used collage to comment on the social and political issues of her time. In works like Cut with the Kitchen Knife, Through the Last Weimar Beer Belly Cultural Epoch in Germany, 1919, Hook juxtaposed images of the human body with machinery and various elements of Weimar-era culture to critique the fragmentation and disillusionment of post-World War I society. The Surrealist collage also aimed to bridge the gap between the conscious and unconscious mind, creating a visual language that could communicate the hidden thoughts and emotions of the artist. The unexpected juxtapositions, which seemed irrational or nonsensical at first glance, were meant to provoke new associations in the viewer's mind, encouraging them to look beyond surface appearances and explore deeper layers of meaning. Through collage, Surrealists highlighted the transformative power of the unexpected. The unlikely combinations of images disrupted the viewer's sense of order, creating a space for new interpretations and insights. This technique, with its emphasis on chance, spontaneity, and the surreal, allowed artists to break free from the constraints of traditional art forms, offering a glimpse into the vast, uncharted territory of the unconscious mind. By assembling the fragments of reality in unconventional ways, Surrealists opened up new possibilities for artistic expression and challenged the very foundations of how we understand the world around us. The relationship between the real and the unreal. One of the central themes in Surrealist art is the relationship between the real and the unreal, a duality that the movement sought to blur and challenge. Surrealist artists were deeply interested in the tension between the everyday world of tangible, observable reality and the fluid, irrational world of dreams, imagination, and the unconscious. Rather than seeing these two realms as distinct or opposing, surrealists believed that they were interconnected and that art could serve as a bridge between them, revealing hidden truths about the human experience. The surrealists were inspired by the psychoanalytic theories of Sigmund Freud, who argued that dreams, fantasies, and repressed desires held a deeper, often irrational significance that could provide insights into the unconscious mind. In this sense, the unreal was not seen as mere fantasy or escapism, but rather as a space where the inner workings of the psyche could be expressed and explored. By presenting the unreal in conjunction with the real, surrealist artists invited viewers to reconsider the nature of both, suggesting that the boundaries between them were far more porous than they appeared. In visual art, this fusion of the real and unreal often manifested in dreamlike, uncanny imagery. Artists like Salvador Dali and René Magritte placed ordinary objects in bizarre or impossible contexts, creating scenes that felt both familiar and foreign at the same time. Dali's The Persistence of Memory, 1931, with its melting clocks draped across barren landscapes, juxtaposes the real, clocks, a symbol of time, with the unreal, the fluid, distorted forms that defy physical laws. Similarly, Magritte's The Human Condition, 1933, in which a painting of a landscape is placed in front of a window, presents a scene that appears to be part of the real world, but upon closer inspection, reveals itself to be an illusion, a mirror image of the real world. This blending of the real and unreal was also a way for surrealists to challenge the dominance of rational thought in modern life. In a world increasingly shaped by logic, reason, and scientific inquiry, the surrealists sought to reclaim space for the irrational, the emotional, and the subjective. They believed that the unreal, whether in the form of dreams, fantasy, or the imagination, held important insights into human existence that the rational mind could not access. For the surrealists, the unreal was not merely an escape from reality, but a way of engaging with the deeper, often hidden layers of the human experience. Through their exploration of the real and the unreal, surrealists encouraged a new way of seeing the world, one that embraced ambiguity, contradiction, and the irrational. By merging these two realms, they invited viewers to question the boundaries between what is real and what is imagined, offering a more fluid and expansive understanding of reality itself. In doing so, surrealism opened up new possibilities for artistic expression and created a space where the unconscious mind could be given free rein, providing a fresh perspective on the complexities of human experience. Art as a reflection of the unconscious mind. In surrealist thought, art was seen not just as a representation of the visible world, but as a mirror to the unconscious mind. For artists like André Breton and Salvador Dali, the role of the artist was to break free from the constraints of logical thinking and tap into the deeper layers of the psyche, those hidden, often repressed areas that shape emotions, desires, and fears. Through this lens, art became a powerful tool for exploring the vast and uncharted territory of the unconscious, revealing what lies beneath the surface of everyday experience. Drawing on the theories of Sigmund Freud, surrealists believed that the unconscious mind could be accessed through dreams, fantasies, and spontaneous creative expression. Freud's work on dream analysis, in particular, had a profound impact on the movement, as he suggested that dreams could unlock repressed memories, desires, and emotions. Surrealist artists, therefore, sought to capture not just the external world, but the internal, unseen realms of the mind. This was not done through direct representation of personal experiences, but rather through symbolic imagery, distorted forms, and surprising juxtapositions, strategies that aim to bypass the conscious, rational mind and communicate the irrational, fragmented truths of the unconscious. Automatism, a technique championed by surrealists, was one such method for channeling the unconscious into visual form. By allowing the hand to move freely across the canvas without the interference of conscious thought, artists sought to let their subconscious guide the creative process. The resulting works were often abstract, filled with chaotic lines, spontaneous shapes, and non-traditional forms, reflecting the erratic nature of the unconscious mind. Through this process, the artist could access raw, untapped emotions and thoughts that might otherwise remain hidden or suppressed. Surrealist art also reflected the unconscious by embracing paradox and irrationality. Artists often combined unlikely elements, such as clocks that melt into the landscape or human figures that morph into other objects, challenging conventional notions of logic and reason. This was done with the understanding that the unconscious operates outside of rational thought, often presenting conflicting or contradictory ideas. Surrealism, therefore, was not just an exploration of the strange or absurd, but an attempt to depict the internal chaos and complexity of human consciousness. Ultimately, Surrealism's portrayal of the unconscious mind in art was a groundbreaking approach to visual representation. It offered a way to explore the hidden depths of human experience, bringing to light emotions, memories, and desires that could not be easily expressed through conventional artistic means. By breaking down the barriers between the conscious and unconscious, Surrealist artists created a new language of visual storytelling, one that invited viewers to look beyond the surface and consider the complex forces that shape our inner lives. Chapter 5: The Surrealist Movement and Psychoanalysis. The Surrealist movement was deeply intertwined with the emerging field of psychoanalysis, particularly the theories of Sigmund Freud. Freud's exploration of the unconscious mind, dreams, repression, and desire resonated strongly with the Surrealists, who sought to delve into these hidden realms through art. The intersection of psychoanalysis and Surrealism was not just intellectual but also practical, with Surrealist artists and writers employing psychoanalytic concepts to explore the mysteries of the human mind and unleash creativity from unconscious sources. For Surrealists like André Breton, the application of psychoanalysis was essential for understanding and unlocking the latent powers of the unconscious. Breton, in particular, saw Freud's ideas as an essential framework for Surrealism, which aimed to reveal the irrational and dreamlike forces at work beneath the surface of everyday reality. Freud's theories of the unconscious, especially the belief that repressed desires and memories shaped human behavior, aligned with the Surrealist goal of accessing these hidden layers of the mind in artistic practice. Breton's Surrealist Manifesto, 1924, explicitly called for the liberation of the mind from the constraints of rationality, using dreams, fantasies, and automatic techniques to express the desires and anxieties that lurked beneath the surface of consciousness. One of the most significant ways in which psychoanalysis influenced Surrealism was through the concept of dreams. Freud's groundbreaking work on dream interpretation suggested that dreams were not random or meaningless, but rather revealed the unconscious mind's inner workings. Surrealists, particularly Salvador Dali, embraced this idea and sought to depict the illogical, disjointed, and fantastical qualities of dreams in their art. Dali's famous paintings, such as The Persistence of Memory, 1931, reflect the fluidity of time and perception often experienced in dreams, using familiar objects in strange and unexpected ways to evoke a sense of disorientation. Additionally, the practice of automatism, a technique that allowed the unconscious to guide the creative process without rational interference, was directly influenced by psychoanalytic thought. Artists would create spontaneous, unplanned works, allowing their subconscious minds to dictate the form and content of the piece. This technique was meant to bypass the conscious mind's critical faculties and allow for a more honest, direct expression of the unconscious. Surrealists believed that this kind of uncensored creativity could unlock powerful emotional and psychological truths. The Surrealists were also interested in the Freudian concept of repression, the process by which individuals push unwanted thoughts, memories, or desires out of conscious awareness. They saw this as a fundamental aspect of human experience, one that could be explored through art. Through their works, surrealists sought to bring repressed memories and desires into the light, often through symbolic imagery that might have shocking or unsettling effects. While the relationship between surrealism and psychoanalysis was not always straightforward, with some critics even accusing the movement of oversimplifying or misinterpreting Freud's theories, there is no doubt that psychoanalysis played a key role in shaping surrealism's focus on the unconscious mind. By embracing psychoanalytic ideas, the surrealists pushed the boundaries of art, unlocking new ways of understanding the self and the complex, hidden forces that shape human behavior. In doing so, they created a rich and dynamic artistic movement that remains deeply influential today. The influence of Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud's theories on the unconscious mind, dreams, repression, and the nature of desire had a profound impact on the development of surrealism, shaping both the movement's artistic and philosophical approaches. Freud's groundbreaking work in psychoanalysis, particularly his ideas about the unconscious, provided surrealist artists with a framework for exploring the hidden recesses of the mind and seeking out deeper truths beyond the surface of everyday life. Freud's theories offered a new way to understand human behavior, unlocking a realm that surrealists believed had been largely ignored or repressed by conventional society and art. One of the most significant aspects of Freud's influence on surrealism was his exploration of the unconscious mind. Freud theorized that much of human thought, behavior, and emotion was driven by unconscious forces, hidden desires, repressed memories, and unresolved conflicts that the conscious mind could not easily access or understand. For the surrealists, this was a powerful insight. They believed that art could serve as a means to tap into these hidden realms, allowing for an authentic expression of the irrational, illogical, and fantastical aspects of the human experience. By engaging with the unconscious, surrealists aimed to reveal truths that went beyond what was visible to the rational mind. Freud's work on dreams was also highly influential. In The Interpretation of Dreams, 1900, Freud argued that dreams were a gateway to the unconscious, filled with symbolic meaning that could unlock repressed memories and desires. Surrealists, particularly Salvador Dali, embraced this idea and sought to depict the illogical and disjointed nature of dreams in their artwork. Dali's paintings, like The Persistence of Memory, 1931, reflected the dreamlike qualities of fluid time, shifting realities, and distorted perceptions, elements that were central to Freud's conception of the unconscious mind at work during sleep. Another key concept from Freud that influenced surrealism was the idea of repression. Freud believed that individuals often suppressed uncomfortable or socially unacceptable thoughts and desires, forcing them into the unconscious. Surrealists sought to bring these repressed elements to the surface, challenging the societal norms and expectations that kept them hidden. By doing so, they believed they could access the raw, untapped potential of the human psyche and express emotions and desires that had been repressed or denied. Freud's ideas about the nature of desire were equally important to surrealism. He believed that human behavior was driven by fundamental, often unconscious desires, particularly those related to sexuality and power. Surrealists, in turn, explored these desires in their work, often through shocking or provocative imagery that sought to confront the viewer's own unconscious responses. The use of eroticism, distortion, and taboo subjects in surrealist art reflected Freud's assertion that the human mind was driven by forces that could not easily be controlled or understood. In sum, Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theories provided a foundation for the surrealist movement's exploration of the unconscious mind, dreams, repression, and desire. His ideas challenged traditional understandings of the mind and human behavior, offering surrealists a powerful tool for unlocking hidden truths through art. By drawing on Freud's work, surrealism became a vehicle for expressing the complex, irrational forces that shape human experience, offering a new lens through which to view both the self and the world around us. The interpretation of dreams in surrealist art. The interpretation of dreams played a central role in the Surrealist movement, which sought to explore and express the unconscious mind. Inspired by Sigmund Freud's pioneering work on dreams, particularly his theory that dreams serve as a window into repressed desires, emotions, and unresolved conflicts, Surrealist artists endeavored to capture the illogical, irrational, and fantastical aspects of dreams in their works. For them, dreams were not simply random images, but meaningful experiences, brimming with symbolism and insight into the deeper layers of the psyche. Freud's The Interpretation of Dreams, 1900, argued that dreams are the unconscious mind's attempt to fulfill repressed wishes and desires, often in disguised forms. He suggested that the bizarre, fragmented, and sometimes contradictory nature of dreams was a reflection of the mind's internal conflicts. This perspective deeply resonated with the Surrealists, who viewed dreams as an untapped source of creativity and self-expression. By tapping into the dream world, Surrealists sought to bypass the logical constraints of the conscious mind, revealing an alternate reality where the ordinary and the fantastical coexisted without boundaries. Salvador Dali, one of the most prominent figures of the Surrealist movement, was profoundly influenced by Freud's ideas on dreams. His works, such as The Persistence of Memory, 1931, evoke the strange, fluid quality of dreams, where time appears to melt and shift in impossible ways. The melting clocks in The Persistence of Memory challenge our perception of time and reality, mirroring the distortion that often occurs in dreams, where time can feel disjointed and fluid. Dali's incorporation of dream imagery in his paintings was an attempt to visually capture the emotional and psychological truth of the dream world, truths that, according to Freud, were often hidden beneath layers of repression. René Magritte, another key surrealist, explored the tension between reality and the dream world through his iconic use of familiar objects in unfamiliar, dreamlike contexts. In works such as The Lovers, 1928, where two figures are obscured by cloth, Magritte's paintings blur the boundaries between the real and the surreal, suggesting that the familiar world is merely a mask that hides deeper, more mysterious truths, much like the hidden meanings of dreams. His art invites the viewer to question the nature of reality itself, encouraging them to consider what lies beneath the surface, just as Freud encouraged a deeper interpretation of the symbols in dreams. The Surrealists also embraced automatism, a technique designed to capture the spontaneous flow of unconscious thoughts, often mirroring the free association found in dreams. Through this method, artists would allow their subconscious to guide the creation of their work, bypassing the logical and rational processes of the conscious mind. This technique aligned closely with Freud's belief that dreams could reveal repressed desires and fears, and Surrealists believed that by accessing this unconscious material, they could discover new and profound insights into human nature. Overall, the Surrealist interpretation of dreams was an attempt to break free from the confines of rational thought and engage directly with the unconscious mind. By portraying the illogical, bizarre, and dreamlike qualities of the unconscious, Surrealist artists sought to challenge our perceptions of reality and to explore the deeper psychological and emotional forces that shape human experience. Through their dream-inspired art, they invited the viewer to consider the ways in which the unconscious mind influences and shapes our understanding of the world around us. The role of the psychoanalyst in Surrealism. In the Surrealist movement, psychoanalysis played a crucial role in shaping both the creative process and the understanding of the unconscious mind. While Surrealist artists sought to access the deeper realms of the psyche through their work, the figure of the psychoanalyst also became important in guiding and interpreting this journey. Drawing heavily from Sigmund Freud's theories, the Surrealists saw the psychoanalyst not only as a scientific practitioner, but also as a kind of collaborator in the artistic process, someone who could help uncover the hidden meanings embedded in the unconscious mind and reveal the psychological underpinnings of creative expression. One of the key ideas that psychoanalysts shared with Surrealists was that the unconscious mind harbored repressed desires, fears, and unresolved conflicts that shaped human behavior. For Surrealist artists, these hidden psychological forces were a source of inspiration and creative energy, and they believed that the task of art was to give form to these often repressed thoughts. Freud's work on dream interpretation, the analysis of free associations, and the study of symbols were particularly influential in this context. For many surrealists, the psychoanalyst's role was to help interpret the symbols and imagery that emerge from dreams, fantasies, and automatic writing. In a sense, the psychoanalyst became a guide for the surrealist artist. André Breton, one of the movement's most prominent figures, frequently emphasized the need for artists to connect with their unconscious through methods like automatism, where the conscious mind is bypassed to reveal raw and unfiltered ideas. While the artist may have been the one to create the work, the psychoanalyst was seen as instrumental in helping the artist understand and contextualize the symbolic content that emerged from these unconscious processes. This collaboration was part of the larger surrealist endeavor to break free from the rigid structures of rational thought and explore the depths of the human psyche. In this regard, the psychoanalyst in surrealism was not simply a passive observer, but an active participant in the creative journey. By helping artists confront their repressed emotions and unresolved conflicts, psychoanalysts aided them in navigating the often troubling and irrational terrain of the unconscious mind. Through this process, surrealists hope to unlock new creative possibilities and expand the boundaries of artistic expression. The role of the psychoanalyst was not limited to individual artists. It also extended to the interpretation of surrealist works for the public. As surrealism gained attention, psychoanalysts and critics alike began to offer insights into the psychological undercurrents present in surrealist art. This interpretation, grounded in psychoanalytic theory, helped to reveal the deeper meanings of seemingly irrational or chaotic imagery, guiding viewers toward a richer understanding of the work. In conclusion, the psychoanalyst played a vital role in the surrealist movement, not only as a theorist and interpreter, but also as a guide in the artistic exploration of the unconscious. By applying psychoanalytic principles, surrealists were able to deepen their understanding of the mind and create works that explored the irrational, emotional, and psychological depths of the human experience. The collaborative relationship between psychoanalyst and artist helped surrealism push the boundaries of conventional art, providing a pathway to unlock the mysteries of the unconscious and revealing new possibilities for both artistic and psychological expression. Surrealism's rejection of rational thought. At the heart of the surrealist movement lies a deep rejection of rational thought, which was seen as a constricting force that limited human creativity and suppressed the vast potential of the unconscious mind. Inspired by the psychoanalytic theories of Sigmund Freud and the revolutionary ideas of Dadaism, surrealists sought to break free from the logic, order, and reason that dominated Western thought, especially in the wake of the devastation of the First World War. They believed that traditional rationality stifled true creativity and spiritual freedom, and thus, to reach a higher, more authentic mode of expression, it was necessary to embrace the irrational, the illogical, and the unpredictable. The surrealists were particularly critical of the ways in which reason had been used to organize and control society, often at the expense of individual expression and emotional depth. Rational thought, according to the surrealists, had led to the mechanization of life, the dehumanization of art, and the repression of the unconscious mind. The rational mind, with its tendency to categorize, analyze, and impose order, was seen as a barrier to accessing the deeper, more primal aspects of human existence. In contrast, the surrealists championed spontaneity, intuition, and dreams as pathways to uncovering a more liberated form of creativity. One of the most significant ways surrealists rejected rational thought was through the technique of automatism. By allowing their hand to move freely on the canvas or paper without conscious interference, Surrealist artists sought to bypass the rational mind's control over the creative process. This automatic drawing or writing allowed the subconscious to emerge without the filtering influence of logic or self-censorship. The result was often chaotic, fragmented, or seemingly nonsensical, yet these works were seen as direct expressions of the unconscious, emotions, desires, and fears that could not be easily articulated through conventional means. Surrealists also employed dream imagery to emphasize the irrationality of human experience. Dreams, in the Surrealist view, were a direct manifestation of the unconscious, bypassing the control of the conscious, rational mind. In paintings like Salvador Dali's The Persistence of Memory, 1931, the dreamlike qualities of time and space collapse in a way that defies logical understanding. The juxtaposition of objects in strange, unexpected ways, such as melting clocks or distorted figures, serve to challenge conventional perceptions of reality and the limitations of rational thought. The movement's radical rejection of reason also extended beyond art and into the realm of politics and society. Surrealists sought to upend traditional structures and hierarchies, advocating for an unregulated and free flow of thought, imagination, and individual expression. By embracing the unconscious and the irrational, they hoped to create a new, more liberated world, one in which personal and collective freedom could flourish unimpeded by the constraints of reason and order. In summary, Surrealism's rejection of rational thought was not simply a critique of intellectualism or scientific reasoning, but a profound call to reconnect with the deeper, more instinctual aspects of human experience. By breaking free from the confines of reason, Surrealists aimed to access new realms of creativity, emotion, and truth, unveiling a world in which the unconscious mind and irrationality could express themselves freely. Through their art, they sought to dismantle the rigid boundaries that reason had imposed on both the self and society, envisioning a more liberated and imaginative way of living. Surrealism and the exploration of taboo subjects. Surrealism's bold exploration of taboo subjects was central to its radical approach to art and life. In its quest to challenge societal norms and dismantle conventional understandings of reality, Surrealism sought to confront the uncomfortable, the repressed, and the forbidden, making taboo subjects an essential part of its discourse. These subjects, ranging from sexuality and violence to death and irrationality, were often regarded as off-limits or inappropriate by mainstream culture. However, the Surrealists saw in these forbidden realms a profound source of creative power, liberation, and psychological insight. The Surrealist movement emerged in the aftermath of the First World War, a time when the constraints of bourgeois society were increasingly seen as contributing to the dehumanization and destruction of the war. The Surrealists rejected the traditional, sanitized representations of reality and instead sought to confront the deeper, darker aspects of human existence. They believed that by engaging with these taboo subjects, subjects that had been repressed by conventional morality, they could bring about a more authentic understanding of the self and the world. Sexuality was perhaps the most prominent taboo subject addressed by the Surrealists. Sigmund Freud's theories on the unconscious, particularly his ideas about repression and sexual desire, were integral to the movement's exploration of this subject. The Surrealists believed that the repression of sexuality by societal norms stifled creativity and prevented a deeper understanding of human nature. Artists like Salvador Dali and Max Ernst often incorporated explicit, erotic imagery in their works to confront the taboo surrounding sex and to explore its complex relationship with desire, power, and the unconscious. Dali's The Great Masturbator, 1929, is one such example, where the distorted, dreamlike rendering of sexuality reflects the dissonance between repressed desire and conscious morality. Violence and the grotesque were also explored as taboo subjects, with artists frequently depicting shocking or disturbing imagery to challenge the viewer's comfort zone. These works often served as a critique of both societal violence and the violence embedded in the human psyche. For example, in The Elephant Celebes, 1921, Max Ernst combines images of mechanical, surreal creatures with unsettling scenes of violence and death, creating a dreamlike, yet menacing atmosphere. Through this, the Surrealists aim to expose the raw, unacknowledged aggression and chaos lurking beneath the surface of civilization. Furthermore, the Surrealists address themes of death and decay, subjects often considered morbid or taboo in polite society. In works such as Dali's The Sacrament of the Last Supper, 1955, the Surrealists used religious, mythological, and psychological imagery to confront the inevitability of death and the ways in which it is culturally suppressed. By confronting death, the Surrealists sought to explore the boundaries between life and death, existence and non-existence, aiming to break free from the societal taboos that circumscribe such themes. By tackling taboo subjects head-on, Surrealists sought to shake off the limitations of conventional thinking and unlock new possibilities for personal and collective freedom. They believed that by exploring the darkest and most repressed aspects of the human experience, they could engage with the unconscious mind and bring to light truths that were otherwise hidden. In doing so, Surrealism aimed not only to liberate the individual from the constraints of society, but also to challenge the larger cultural, political, and psychological forces that sought to control and suppress human expression. Through their engagement with taboo subjects, Surrealists created a radical, transformative art that continues to resonate with audiences today. Chapter 6: Surrealism and Politics. Surrealism, while primarily an artistic movement, was also deeply entwined with political ideology. The Surrealists sought to challenge not just the conventions of art, but also the societal and political structures that they saw as oppressive, repressive, and stifling human freedom and creativity. Emerging in the aftermath of the First World War, the Surrealists were disillusioned by the violence and destruction they had witnessed, and they turned to art as a means to combat the established systems of power, authority, and reason that they believed had led to the war. They rejected the conservative and bourgeois values that dominated European society, seeking instead a new political and cultural vision that embraced liberation, spontaneity, and the exploration of the unconscious mind. One of the most significant aspects of Surrealism's political engagement was its radical critique of capitalist society. Surrealists viewed capitalism as a system that reduced human beings to mere commodities, commodifying not just labor, but also human desires, emotions, and creativity. In their eyes, the constraints of capitalist society limited the potential for true freedom and individual expression. They were particularly critical of the way that reason, logic, and industrialization had shaped modern life, suppressing the unconscious and irrational elements of human experience. To the Surrealists, the rigid structures of capitalism were inextricably linked to the social and political order that upheld them. The Surrealists were also profoundly influenced by Marxism, particularly in their critique of class structures and the exploitation of workers. While not all Surrealists identified strictly with Marxist ideology, many were aligned with leftist politics and sought to use their art as a means to critique and subvert the prevailing social order. Figures like André Breton, the movement's founding figure, saw Surrealism as an agent of revolutionary change. He believed that art, by tapping into the unconscious, could help dismantle the psychological and social barriers that kept individuals trapped in oppressive systems. Surrealist art, in this sense, was seen as a tool for political liberation, allowing individuals to access hidden desires and revolutionary potential that could help overthrow the status quo. The Surrealists were also sympathetic to the rise of revolutionary movements in their time, including the Russian Revolution and the anti-fascist struggles in Europe. Many of them viewed the political struggles of their era through the lens of psychoanalysis, believing that the liberation of the individual was necessary for broader social transformation. However, their engagement with politics was often complicated, as some surrealists rejected the authoritarian tendencies of both fascism and Stalinism, preferring a more open and free approach to social and political change. Surrealism's relationship with politics was not without contradictions. While the movement sought to disrupt conventional social structures, it also embraced a certain degree of autonomy and individual freedom that sometimes conflicted with more orthodox political ideologies. This tension between individual liberation and collective revolution remained a defining feature of Surrealism's political stance. Nonetheless, the Surrealists' political engagement was undeniably radical, seeking to challenge not only the dominant cultural narratives, but also the very structures of power and control that shaped the modern world. In sum, Surrealism's political dimension was integral to its artistic practice, as the movement aimed to use art as a tool for social and political transformation. By rejecting rationality, confronting societal taboos, and embracing the unconscious, Surrealists sought to uncover and dismantle the forces of repression that they saw as central to both the political and cultural status quo. Through their work, they proposed a new world in which personal freedom, creative expression, and political liberation could coexist, free from the constraints imposed by the powers that be. Surrealism's political stance, revolutionary ideals. Surrealism was not just an artistic movement, but also a radical political stance that sought to challenge and transform the social, political, and cultural structures of its time. The Surrealists were deeply committed to revolutionary ideals, viewing art as a means to subvert the repressive systems of power that they believed stifled human freedom, creativity, and potential. Emerging in the aftermath of the First World War, Surrealism was a response to the trauma and disillusionment brought on by the horrors of the war, and it sought to create a new world through the liberation of the unconscious mind and the dismantling of societal conventions. One of the central revolutionary ideals of Surrealism was the belief in the liberation of the individual from the constraints of bourgeois society. Surrealists believed that modern civilization, with its emphasis on reason, logic, and materialism, had created a world in which human creativity, desire, and emotional depth were suppressed. They sought to break free from the rational thought that dominated both art and society, rejecting the conformity of everyday life in favor of an exploration of the irrational, the dreamlike, and the subconscious. In this sense, Surrealism was an attack on the status quo, a call for personal and collective freedom from the social, political, and psychological repression that shaped modern existence. The Surrealists, particularly André Breton, viewed this liberation as deeply tied to revolutionary political change. They saw the struggle for individual freedom as interconnected with broader social struggles, including the fight against capitalism, class oppression, and authoritarianism. Although not all Surrealists adhered strictly to Marxist ideology, many were sympathetic to leftist politics and the ideals of social revolution. They believed that the transformation of society and the overthrow of oppressive systems could not be achieved without a radical shift in consciousness, one that involved not just the political realm, but also the personal and emotional spheres of human life. Breton, in particular, envisioned Surrealism as a kind of intellectual and artistic vanguard that could help lead this transformation. For him, the power of Surrealism lay in its ability to reach beyond the limitations of rational thought and uncover the hidden desires, fantasies, and fears that shaped human behavior. By confronting these unconscious forces, Surrealists believed they could create a new reality that was freer, more imaginative, and more in tune with the true nature of the human spirit. The Surrealists' commitment to revolution was also reflected in their opposition to the authoritarian regimes that were rising in Europe at the time. They were vehemently anti-fascist and critical of Stalinism, rejecting any form of political oppression that stifled individual creativity and expression. Surrealism, in their view, was about freedom, not just freedom of the individual, but also the freedom to explore and express the full range of human experience, from the absurd to the sublime. In conclusion, Surrealism's political stance was rooted in a desire for profound social and personal transformation. By challenging the rational, capitalist, and authoritarian systems of the time, Surrealists sought to create a new world based on creativity, freedom, and the exploration of the unconscious mind. For them, revolution was not just a political act, but an artistic and psychological one, aiming to liberate humanity from the oppressive forces that limited both individual and collective potential. Through their revolutionary ideals, the Surrealists sought to reimagine a world where the unconscious could be free and human creativity could flourish without constraint. Surrealism and Marxism. Surrealism's relationship with Marxism was complex and multifaceted, intertwining revolutionary ideals with the desire to break free from the repressive structures of society. At its core, Surrealism was deeply concerned with human liberation, both on a personal and societal level, and it recognized that political and economic systems were crucial in shaping the conditions under which human beings lived and expressed themselves. While not all Surrealists fully embraced Marxism, the movement was profoundly influenced by Marxist principles, particularly in its critique of capitalism and its aspirations for a society based on equality and freedom. The connection between Surrealism and Marxism began with the shared belief that art and culture were not neutral, but were deeply intertwined with the economic and political systems of their time. Just as Marxism analyzed society through its class structures and material conditions, Surrealism sought to explore the psychological and emotional forces that shaped human behavior, often rooted in the repression caused by these very systems. André Breton, the movement's founder, saw a revolutionary potential in Surrealism, believing that it could serve as an intellectual and artistic vanguard in the struggle for a more just and liberated society. In his view, the emancipation of the individual mind and spirit was inseparable from the political liberation of the working class. Breton's involvement with Marxism, however, was not without tension. In the early years of Surrealism, he embraced Marxist ideas, viewing them as complementary to the Surrealists' goals. The critique of capitalism, with its dehumanizing effects, resonated deeply with the Surrealists' rejection of bourgeois society and its emphasis on rationality, conformity, and materialism. Surrealists, like Marxists, were critical of the way in which capitalism commodified human desires and creativity, seeing this system as stifling the full expression of the human potential. However, as the movement progressed, tensions began to surface between the Surrealists and orthodox Marxism, particularly with regard to the relationship between art and politics. Surrealists rejected the rigid, doctrinaire approach to art favored by some Marxists, believing that true artistic expression required freedom from ideological constraints. They argued that the creative process could not be reduced to a mere tool of political propaganda, and that the autonomy of the artist was crucial to the revolutionary potential of art. This divergence led to a degree of estrangement between Surrealism and the Communist Party, particularly when Breton and others became disillusioned with the authoritarianism they saw in Stalinism. Despite these differences, Surrealism's engagement with Marxism continued to influence its political stance. The Surrealist critique of capitalism and their desire to dismantle social hierarchies remained central to their revolutionary vision. They sought a society where human creativity and individuality could flourish, free from the constraints imposed by economic and political systems. In this sense, Surrealism and Marxism shared a common aspiration to create a world in which both material and psychological liberation could be achieved, though their paths to that goal diverged. Ultimately, Surrealism's relationship with Marxism highlights the movement's broader revolutionary ambitions. Its desire to not only transform society through political action, but to challenge the very structures that constrained human imagination and creativity. While Surrealism's engagement with Marxism may have been marked by contradictions and tensions, it was undoubtedly shaped by the shared goal of emancipation, both from the material conditions of capitalism and from the psychological repression that stifled the human spirit. Surrealism's critique of bourgeois society. Surrealism emerged as a radical artistic and intellectual movement that sought to critique and challenge the values, norms, and institutions of bourgeois society. The Surrealists, led by figures such as André Breton, were deeply disillusioned by the social, political, and economic structures that had led to the devastation of the First World War and the ongoing crisis of modernity. They viewed the bourgeois order as repressive, stifling creativity, individuality, and genuine human expression in favor of materialism, rationality, and conformity. Through their work, the Surrealists aimed to expose the limitations of bourgeois society and to call for a radical transformation of both the cultural and political landscapes. At the heart of Surrealism's critique of bourgeois society was its rejection of reason and logic, which were seen as central to the bourgeois worldview. The Surrealists believed that rational thought, driven by the demands of capitalist society, suppressed the irrational, emotional, and imaginative aspects of human experience that were essential for true freedom. They argued that bourgeois society's emphasis on order, structure, and control left little room for the exploration of the unconscious mind, dreams, and desires, elements that Surrealism saw as vital to human existence. By prioritizing reason and scientific logic, the bourgeois world had, in the eyes of the Surrealists, created a sterile, mechanized culture that dehumanized individuals and stifled creativity. The Surrealists also critiqued the commodification of life under capitalism. They saw how capitalism reduced human beings to mere economic units, exploiting labor, desire, and even emotions for profit. Surrealists were particularly concerned with the ways in which capitalism commodified human creativity. Under this system, art and culture were no longer valued for their transformative or liberatory potential, but were instead produced and consumed as goods within a market-driven economy. For the Surrealists, this process of commodification represented a deeper spiritual and cultural crisis in which human beings were alienated from their true selves and from one another. They viewed the culture of consumption as a force that both diminished the value of art and limited its potential to catalyze change. In their works, Surrealists sought to overturn the norms of bourgeois society by tapping into the unconscious mind, embracing irrationality, and breaking free from the constraints of traditional artistic forms. The use of dream imagery, automatic writing, and juxtaposition of the unlikely were just a few of the techniques employed to subvert the rational structures of society. Surrealism's challenge to bourgeois conventions extended beyond art. It was a cultural rebellion, one that sought to liberate human beings from the psychological and societal chains imposed by the prevailing order. Surrealism's critique of bourgeois society was not just about rejecting its materialism and rationalism, but also about imagining a new way of living. The Surrealists believed that by breaking free from the confines of bourgeois norms, individuals could access a deeper, more authentic form of self-expression and creativity. In doing so, they hoped to create a society that valued freedom, spontaneity, and imagination over control, order, and consumption. Through their critique, the Surrealists sought to ignite a broader cultural revolution, one that would transform not only art, but also the very fabric of social life. The Surrealists' involvement in social movements. The Surrealist movement was not just an artistic revolution, but also a socially and politically engaged force. The artists, writers, and thinkers associated with Surrealism saw their work as intimately connected with the struggle for societal transformation. Beyond the realm of art, Surrealists sought to challenge and disrupt the repressive systems of power that dominated their time, including capitalism, colonialism, and authoritarianism. Their involvement in various social movements reflected their belief that true artistic and cultural freedom could not be achieved without significant political change. One of the key areas in which Surrealists engaged with social movements was in their active opposition to fascism and other forms of authoritarianism. During the rise of fascist regimes in Europe in the 1930s, Surrealists were vocal in their condemnation of leaders such as Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini, whose totalitarian policies directly contradicted the movement's commitment to individual freedom and creative expression. In response to this political climate, many surrealists allied themselves with anti-fascist movements and supported efforts to resist the growing threat of fascism. Figures like Breton and other surrealists viewed their art as a direct form of resistance to the oppressive ideologies of the time. The surrealists were also deeply involved in anti-colonial movements, recognizing the ways in which imperialism and colonialism dehumanized both the colonizers and the colonized. Many surrealists expressed solidarity with movements for independence in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. They saw the struggle for decolonization as an extension of their broader revolutionary ideals, which included the liberation of the individual from both cultural and political oppression. Surrealism's focus on liberation, creativity, and the subconscious also resonated with the anti-colonial critique of European dominance and exploitation. Surrealism's engagement with Marxist ideas furthered its involvement in social movements, particularly in relation to class struggle and the fight against capitalism. Although the movement was never fully aligned with any political party or ideology, surrealists like André Breton were sympathetic to Marxist principles, especially the critique of capitalist exploitation and the commodification of human life. They believed that the true potential of human beings could only be realized in a society free from capitalist oppression. As such, they saw their art as part of a larger social and political project aimed at dismantling the capitalist system and creating a world that prioritized human liberation over profit. The Surrealists also engaged with feminist movements, challenging traditional gender roles and the patriarchy. Many Surrealist works explored themes of sexuality and the subversion of societal norms around gender, reflecting a growing interest in feminist ideas, especially in the context of the early 20th century. The movement's embrace of the unconscious, dreams, and desire resonated with feminist critiques of the ways in which women's bodies and sexuality were controlled and marginalized in society. In sum, the Surrealists' involvement in social movements was rooted in their belief that art had the power to inspire social and political change. Whether through their anti-fascist activism, support for anti-colonial struggles, sympathy for Marxist ideas, or engagement with feminist thought, Surrealism was not just about revolutionizing art. It was about revolutionizing society itself. By challenging the structures of power that shaped the modern world, the Surrealists sought to create a more liberated, just, and imaginative society where the individual could be free from both social and political constraints. The legacy of Surrealism in political thought. Surrealism's impact on political thought extends far beyond its role as an avant-garde art movement. While it is often remembered for its aesthetic contributions, its dreamlike imagery and radical techniques, it also played a pivotal role in shaping political discourse in the 20th century. Surrealists envisioned a world liberated from the constraints of rationality, social conventions, and oppressive political systems, and they saw their work as a catalyst for revolutionary change. The political legacy of Surrealism, while complex and not always fully realized, has influenced a range of political movements and intellectual traditions, leaving an enduring imprint on how we think about freedom, creativity, and societal transformation. At the heart of Surrealism's political legacy was its critique of the status quo, particularly the capitalist and bourgeois systems that Surrealists believed stifled individual freedom and creativity. For Surrealists, the liberation of the human spirit was inextricably linked to the dismantling of oppressive political and economic structures. The Surrealists saw the capitalist system as one that commodified and dehumanized people, reducing them to mere economic units, while promoting conformity and materialism. In their view, true social and political change could not occur without a shift in consciousness, one that challenged both the material conditions of society and the psychological forces that shaped human behavior. In this context, Surrealism's legacy in political thought lies in its vision for a radical transformation of society. Surrealists, particularly André Breton, believed that the subversion of established norms, both in art and in life, was essential to achieving a more liberated world. Their calls for the dissolution of boundaries between reality and the unconscious, the individual and the collective, were intended to foster a society in which human potential could be fully realized. Surrealism's challenge to the rationality and order of bourgeois society was a direct challenge to the systems that maintained inequality and oppression. Surrealism's influence on political thought also extended to its engagement with Marxism and revolutionary ideals. Although there were tensions between Surrealism and orthodox Marxism, both shared a commitment to the idea of social transformation and the overthrow of capitalist structures. Surrealists were particularly drawn to the revolutionary potential of Marxist ideas, believing that both political and psychological liberation were necessary to create a truly free society. The Surrealists, however, were critical of the authoritarianism they saw in Soviet communism, and they rejected any political system that suppressed individual creativity in the name of ideological conformity. Moreover, Surrealism's focus on the unconscious, desire, and personal freedom has had a lasting impact on later political movements, particularly those concerned with the politics of identity, sexuality, and the body. Surrealism's engagement with taboo subjects and its exploration of themes such as sexuality, gender, and the subconscious laid the groundwork for feminist, queer, and psychoanalytic approaches to politics. By rejecting the notion of a fixed, rational self and embracing the fluidity and complexity of human experience, Surrealism has influenced the way we think about personal autonomy and the politics of self-expression. In conclusion, the political legacy of Surrealism is one of radical transformation and liberation. Its critique of capitalist society, its engagement with Marxist thought, and its commitment to personal and collective freedom have left an enduring mark on political discourse. Surrealism continues to inspire those who seek to challenge the established order, pushing for a world where creativity, imagination, and human potential are no longer constrained by oppressive systems. Chapter 7: Surrealism and Film. Surrealism's relationship with film was one of the most innovative and compelling intersections of art and cinema in the 20th century. As an art movement that sought to disrupt conventional norms of logic and reality, Surrealism was a natural fit for the world of film, a medium inherently concerned with the manipulation of time, space, and perception. Surrealist filmmakers explored the potential of cinema as a tool to break down the boundaries between the conscious and unconscious mind, creating works that were as much a psychological exploration as they were visual experiments. One of the primary ways Surrealism influenced film was through its emphasis on dreamlike, fragmented narratives and imagery. Just as Surrealist artists used collage, juxtaposition, and irrational symbolism in their paintings, filmmakers sought to blur the lines between reality and fantasy, creating films that functioned like vivid, nonsensical dreams. Surrealist films often ignored traditional storytelling structures in favor of disjointed sequences that evoked emotions and experiences rather than linear plots. This approach reflected the Surrealists' interest in the unconscious mind, which they believed could reveal deeper truths about the human condition. A key figure in the relationship between Surrealism and film was the Spanish filmmaker Luis Buñuel. Buñuel's early works, particularly Un Chien Andalú, 1929, created in collaboration with artist Salvador Dalí, are among the most iconic examples of Surrealist cinema. Un Chien Andalú is notorious for its shocking imagery and deliberate subversion of narrative logic, such as the infamous scene of an eyeball being slashed that evokes the disorienting, non-linear nature of dreams. This short film encapsulates the surrealist ideal of breaking free from the constraints of rational thought and exploring the depths of the unconscious. Another significant surrealist filmmaker was Jean Cocteau, whose works, such as La Belle et la Bête, 1946, and Le Sang d'un Poète, 1930, explored the surreal and fantastical through visually striking and emotionally intense narratives. Cocteau's films often merged elements of myth, fantasy, and dream, reflecting the surrealist interest in transcending the limitations of the everyday world to access deeper, more irrational truths. His films were highly symbolic and embraced a fluid approach to time and space, making them integral to the surrealist cinematic tradition. Surrealism also inspired other filmmakers, including those working outside the immediate orbit of the movement, who were influenced by its exploration of the irrational and the unconscious. Filmmakers such as David Lynch, Terry Gilliam, and Alejandro Jodorowsky have cited surrealist cinema as an influence on their own work, which often plays with unconventional narrative structures, distorted realities, and a deep connection to psychological themes. In addition to the formal experimentation of surrealist cinema, the movement's influence on film extended to its ideological goals. Surrealist filmmakers sought to challenge the status quo, subvert societal norms, and use cinema as a means of awakening viewers to the repressed aspects of their psyche. By rejecting conventional narratives and embracing the surreal and irrational, they aimed to create a filmic experience that could provoke a profound emotional and psychological response, forcing the audience to confront the boundaries between fantasy and reality. Ultimately, surrealism's impact on film was profound, contributing to the development of avant-garde cinema and influencing generations of filmmakers. Through its exploration of the unconscious, the irrational, and the boundary-pushing potential of film as a medium, surrealism helped to redefine what cinema could achieve both artistically and philosophically. Surrealism's influence on cinema. Surrealism's impact on cinema is one of the most defining and transformative aspects of the movement's legacy, pushing the boundaries of how film could be used as a medium for artistic and psychological expression. Emerging in the early 20th century as a response to the horrors of war and the stifling nature of bourgeois society, Surrealism sought to explore the unconscious, dreams, and irrationality. Filmmakers were inspired by the movement's emphasis on breaking free from traditional narrative structures and embracing the chaotic and illogical. Surrealist cinema often aimed to evoke emotional, psychological, and philosophical responses by delving into the surreal and the unknown, using film to explore the realms of dreams, fantasies, and the subconscious. Luis Buñuel, one of the central figures in surrealist cinema, revolutionized the medium with his 1929 collaboration with Salvador Dali, Un Chien Andalou. The film's disturbing and unconventional imagery, such as the famous scene of an eyeball being sliced, challenged viewers' expectations of what film could be. The lack of a coherent plot and the focus on shocking, dreamlike sequences reflected the surrealist principle of automatism, where the unconscious mind would be given free rein. Buñuel and Dali's work set the stage for a new kind of filmmaking, where narrative logic was replaced by disjointed, surreal imagery that focused on the irrational aspects of the human psyche. Surrealism's influence extended beyond Buñuel to other filmmakers like Jean Cocteau, whose films such as La Belle et la Bête, 1946, and Le Sang, 1930, incorporated fantastical and dreamlike elements. Cocteau's exploration of myth, magic, and dream imagery made his work an essential part of the surrealist cinematic tradition. His films embraced the fluidity of time and space, with characters and settings often transcending the boundaries of reality in ways that echoed the surrealist's desire to break down the barriers between the conscious and the unconscious. The cinematic techniques pioneered by the surrealists, such as nonlinear storytelling, fragmented narratives, and shocking juxtapositions, continued to influence filmmakers for decades after the movement's peak. Directors like David Lynch, Terry Gilliam, and Alejandro Jodorowsky have drawn inspiration from surrealist cinema, incorporating dreamlike sequences and irrational imagery into their own works. Lynch's Eraserhead, 1977, for example, is filled with surreal and nightmarish images that evoke feelings of disorientation, reflecting Surrealism's commitment to exploring the darker recesses of the mind. Beyond aesthetics, Surrealism's influence on cinema can also be seen in its philosophical impact. Surrealist filmmakers viewed film not just as entertainment, but as a means of confronting the unconscious, challenging societal norms, and awakening deeper truths about the human experience. The Surrealists' revolutionary ideals, which sought to overthrow rationality and conventional thought, were embodied in the way they approached filmmaking. By embracing the irrational and exploring themes of desire, sexuality, and repression, Surrealist cinema created a space where the boundaries of reality could be dissolved, offering audiences a unique experience that was both intellectually and emotionally challenging. In sum, Surrealism's influence on cinema opened up new creative possibilities for filmmakers, shaping the development of avant-garde cinema and leaving an enduring legacy in film history. Its legacy can be seen in the ways contemporary filmmakers continue to experiment with narrative form, psychological depth, and the exploration of dreams and the unconscious, ensuring that the Surrealist vision continues to resonate in the world of cinema today. Key Surrealist films: Un Chien Andalou, L'Âge d'Or. Two of the most significant and influential films in Surrealist cinema are Un Chien Andalou, 1929, and L'Âge d'Or, 1930, both directed by Luis Buñuel and written by Buñuel and Salvador Dalí. These films exemplify the core principles of Surrealism, such as the rejection of logic, the embrace of irrationality, and the exploration of the unconscious mind. Through these films, Buñuel and Dalí created visual experiences that defied conventional narrative structures, offering instead a deeply emotional and psychological exploration of the human experience. Un Chien Andalou was a collaboration between Buñuel and Dalí, marking the first of its kind in Surrealist cinema. The film is notorious for its disorienting, dreamlike imagery that deliberately rejects traditional storytelling. The most infamous sequence, where an eyeball is slashed open with a razor, immediately signals the film's commitment to shock and the disruption of the viewer's expectations. The film's narrative structure is fragmented, with seemingly unrelated scenes that flow together, based on a logic rooted in dream imagery and subconscious associations rather than conventional cause and effect. The film's lack of coherent plot is intentional, as the Surrealists sought to challenge the rationality of everyday life and open up new ways of perceiving reality. Un Chien Andalou was groundbreaking for its time, pushing the boundaries of what film could achieve both artistically and conceptually, and it remains one of the most iconic examples of Surrealist cinema. Following the success of Un Chien Andalou, Buñuel and Dalí collaborated again on L'Âge d'Or, a film that expands upon the themes of the first, while also introducing new political and social dimensions. L'Âge d'Or is more overtly provocative in its critique of societal norms and institutions, including religion and bourgeois values. While still employing the disjointed, dreamlike style of Un Chien Andalou, L'Âge d'Or introduces a more explicit critique of the social order. The film tells the story of a forbidden love affair between a man and a woman, but their relationship is constantly thwarted by external forces, including religious figures and the aristocracy. The film is filled with shocking and absurd images, such as a scene involving a group of people being attacked by a horde of flies, which serve as a critique of societal repression and the control of human desire. The controversial nature of the film, especially its subversive treatment of religion and sexuality, led to its being banned in several countries, but it solidified Buñuel's reputation as a filmmaker willing to confront taboo subjects. Both Un Chien Andalou and L'Âge d'Or represent key milestones in the development of Surrealist cinema. They exemplify the movement's commitment to challenging the status quo, breaking down boundaries between the conscious and unconscious mind, and using film as a tool for social critique. These films are not just visually striking, they also embody the Surrealists' revolutionary ideals, using the language of cinema to question and subvert the rigid structures of society and the mind. As some of the most important films in the history of cinema, Un Chien Andalou and L'Âge d'Or continue to influence filmmakers and artists, ensuring their place as seminal works of surrealist cinema. The aesthetic of surrealist cinema. The aesthetic of surrealist cinema is one of radical experimentation, offering a bold departure from conventional filmmaking by prioritizing the irrational, the dreamlike, and the unconscious. Surrealist filmmakers embraced visual and narrative techniques that sought to disrupt traditional forms of storytelling, creating films that often felt more like waking dreams than logical sequences of events. This new approach to filmmaking aligned with the Surrealist movement's broader goals of challenging rationality, social norms, and established artistic conventions, while unlocking new ways of perceiving and experiencing the world. One of the defining features of Surrealist cinema is its use of striking, often jarring imagery to evoke emotional and psychological responses. Surrealist filmmakers, inspired by the principles of the movement, sought to use the visual language of film to delve into the depths of the unconscious mind. The films often contain bizarre, disorienting imagery, such as distorted faces, uncanny landscapes, and seemingly random events that defy logic. These images, like the infamous razor-slashed eye in Un Chien Andalou, aim to challenge viewers' perceptions and evoke a visceral reaction, forcing them to confront the subconscious layers of reality. Surrealist cinema also often employs techniques that mimic the fragmented, nonlinear nature of dreams. Narratives in surrealist films tend to eschew conventional structure, favoring disjointed sequences, sudden transitions, and abrupt changes in time and space. This breaks away from the traditional cause and effect relationships that govern most films and instead mimics the logic of dreams, where events unfold without clear connections. By doing so, surrealist filmmakers encourage audiences to engage with the film on a more emotional, intuitive level, rather than relying on intellectual comprehension or narrative continuity. The manipulation of time and space is another key aspect of the surrealist film aesthetic. Time is often warped or compressed, creating a sense of fluidity and unreality. In L'Âge d'Or, for example, the film moves freely between different time periods, and characters experience events out of their usual order. Space is often similarly distorted, with the use of odd angles, mirrors, and reflective surfaces to create a sense of disorientation. These techniques blur the boundaries between the real and the unreal, encouraging the viewer to question the nature of reality itself. Sound in surrealist cinema is also crucial to the aesthetic, often dissonant or deliberately mismatched to the imagery. By employing unconventional soundscapes, surrealist filmmakers amplify the sense of alienation and strangeness, enhancing the emotional impact of the visual experience. The use of jarring or discordant sounds heightens the sense of dreamlike unease, creating an atmosphere where reality seems to constantly shift and unravel. In essence, the aesthetic of surrealist cinema is about embracing the irrational and the subconscious, using the film medium to convey experiences that transcend logic and everyday life. Through fragmented narratives, shocking imagery, and the manipulation of time and space, surrealist filmmakers created a cinematic language that was unique, subversive, and profoundly influential. Their work continues to inspire contemporary filmmakers, proving that surrealist cinema's radical aesthetic still holds power to captivate and challenge audiences today. Directors influenced by Surrealism: Luis Buñuel, Jean Cocteau. Surrealism's influence on cinema is evident in the work of several filmmakers, with Luis Buñuel and Jean Cocteau standing out as two of the most prominent directors who integrated surrealist principles into their films. Both directors were deeply influenced by the movement's embrace of irrationality, the unconscious, and the disruption of conventional narrative structures, creating films that remain iconic for their bold experimentation and subversion of reality. Luis Buñuel, one of the most important figures in surrealist cinema, was instrumental in shaping the movement's impact on film. His collaboration with Salvador Dalí on Un Chien Andalou, 1929, marked a revolutionary moment in cinematic history. The film's infamous imagery, such as the shocking sequence of an eyeball being sliced, was not only intended to provoke, but also to challenge the viewer's expectations and provoke an emotional response that bypassed intellectual analysis. Buñuel's surrealist films, such as L'Âge d'Or, 1930, continued to explore themes of rebellion, societal critique, and the irrational, often targeting religious and bourgeois institutions. Through these works, Buñuel solidified his reputation as a filmmaker who pushed the boundaries of cinema to explore deep psychological and philosophical questions, using surreal imagery and fragmented narratives to depict a world where the subconscious ruled. Jean Cocteau, a multifaceted artist known for his work in theater, poetry, and film, also embraced surrealism, though his approach differed from Buñuel's in both tone and style. Cocteau's films, such as La Belle et la Bête, 1946, and Le Sang d'un Poète, 1930, are celebrated for their poetic and dreamlike quality. While Buñuel's films were often abrasive and critical of societal norms, Cocteau's works were more mythological and fantastical in nature. La Belle et la Bête, with its symbolic imagery and otherworldly set design, reimagined the classic fairy tale as a surreal exploration of love, transformation, and the subconscious. In Le Sang d'un Poète, Cocteau created a highly visual and symbolic work that reflected surrealist interests in dreams and the irrational. The film's dreamlike sequences, where a poet's imagination comes to life, captured the essence of surrealism's quest to liberate the unconscious mind and reveal hidden truths. Both Buñuel and Cocteau's works contributed significantly to the evolution of surrealist cinema. They utilized unconventional narrative techniques, such as nonlinear storytelling and fragmented imagery, to create films that mirrored the logic of dreams rather than the structure of traditional narratives. Their exploration of taboo subjects, the subconscious, and irrationality challenged the audience's understanding of reality, and in doing so, reshaped the potential of film as an artistic and philosophical medium. The influence of surrealism in Buñuel's and Cocteau's films extended far beyond their time. Their groundbreaking approaches to cinema continue to inspire directors like David Lynch, Terry Gilliam, and Alejandro Jodorowsky, who embrace surrealist techniques to create films that defy easy interpretation and challenge the viewer to confront the depths of the human psyche. Through Buñuel and Cocteau, surrealism found a lasting and powerful presence in the world of cinema. Surrealist techniques in filmmaking. Surrealist filmmakers employed a range of groundbreaking techniques that transformed the language of cinema and created an entirely new cinematic experience. These techniques were inspired by the movement's core principles, which included a rejection of rational thought, a focus on the unconscious mind, and an embrace of the illogical and the irrational. The result was a unique approach to filmmaking that sought to challenge conventional narrative structures, break down boundaries between the conscious and unconscious, and create films that resonated on an emotional, psychological, and visceral level. One of the most iconic techniques used in surrealist cinema is the manipulation of time and space. Surrealist filmmakers often distorted time, compressing or expanding it in unconventional ways. Time in surrealist films is fluid, as seen in works like Luis Buñuel's Un Chien Andalou, 1929, where scenes transition abruptly without the typical cause and effect logic. This manipulation of time serves to reflect the fragmented, nonlinear nature of dreams, where past, present, and future coexist and often blur together. Similarly, space is frequently distorted or disjointed, with characters interacting in impossible or unexpected environments that further challenge the viewer's sense of reality. Another key technique is the use of shocking, disorienting imagery. Surrealist films often incorporate bizarre, unexpected, or grotesque visuals that serve to jolt the viewer out of their expectations. These images are meant to evoke strong emotional reactions and connect with the subconscious. In Un Chien Andalou, the famous scene of an eyeball being slashed exemplifies this technique, serving as both a visual shock and a metaphor for the breakdown of conventional perception. The emphasis on shocking imagery is a hallmark of Surrealist cinema's desire to confront the audience with the irrational and unearth repressed or hidden aspects of the psyche. The concept of automatism, allowing the unconscious mind to guide creative expression, also plays a pivotal role in Surrealist filmmaking. Filmmakers like Buñuel and Jean Cocteau used automatist techniques such as nonlinear storytelling, abrupt cuts, and disconnected sequences that mimic the random flow of thoughts and associations found in dreams. This style of filmmaking invites the viewer to interpret the film through an emotional or intuitive lens, rather than relying on traditional narrative structures or logical progression. Another defining element of Surrealist filmmaking is the use of symbolism. Surrealists often employed rich visual metaphors to convey deeper psychological or philosophical meanings. Objects, figures, or actions that appear within the narrative may carry symbolic weight, representing unconscious desires, societal repression, or existential themes. This use of symbolism invites viewers to engage with the film on a more interpretive level, allowing the subconscious to guide their understanding of the film's hidden meanings. Lastly, the practice of juxtaposition is central to Surrealist cinema. Surrealist filmmakers often placed unrelated or incongruous images and events side by side, creating a tension that prompts new associations in the viewer's mind. By breaking traditional narrative and visual norms, they sought to reveal hidden connections and the often irrational relationship between seemingly disparate elements. In conclusion, Surrealist filmmakers redefined cinema by employing techniques that disrupted the conventional storytelling, imagery, and structure of film. Their innovations, including time and space manipulation, shocking imagery, automatism, symbolism, and juxtaposition, have left a lasting legacy on the medium, influencing countless filmmakers and continuing to captivate audiences with their bold, dreamlike, and often unsettling explorations of the unconscious. Chapter 8: The Legacy of Surrealism. The legacy of Surrealism extends far beyond its emergence in the early 20th century, influencing a wide range of artistic fields, including visual arts, literature, theater, photography, and cinema. What began as a revolutionary movement in art and literature transformed into a lasting cultural force, one that continues to shape contemporary creative expression. Surrealism's dedication to the exploration of the unconscious mind, irrationality, and dream logic has left a profound imprint on modern and contemporary art, guiding artists to continually challenge the boundaries of perception and reality. In visual arts, Surrealism's impact remains monumental. Artists such as Salvador Dali, René Magritte, and Max Ernst revolutionized painting with their dreamlike landscapes and the juxtaposition of the absurd with the everyday. These artists not only questioned the conventional representation of reality, but also opened up new possibilities for visual expression by incorporating the irrational, the bizarre, and the unconscious into their work. Surrealism paved the way for later art movements, such as abstract expressionism and pop art, which embraced elements of spontaneity and visual experimentation. Even contemporary artists like Jeff Koons, David Lynch, and Yayoi Kusama can trace their stylistic innovations and themes back to the groundwork laid by Surrealists. In literature, Surrealism's influence remains a driving force in modern writing. Writers like André Breton, Paul Éluard, and Louis Aragon introduced techniques like automatic writing, free association, and the exploration of dreams and the subconscious, inspiring a new generation of authors. Surrealism's legacy in literature can be seen in the works of later writers such as William S. Burroughs, Jorge Luis Borges, and Haruki Murakami, who incorporate fragmented narratives, surreal imagery, and psychological depth in their explorations of reality and identity. Surrealism's focus on freeing language from traditional constraints paved the way for the avant-garde movements of the mid-20th century, and continues to inspire writers to experiment with form and content. The world of cinema, too, bears a deep surrealist imprint. Directors like Luis Buñuel, Jean Cocteau, and David Lynch have carried forward Surrealism's revolutionary approach to narrative and visual language, creating films that play with dream logic, subconscious desires, and the disintegration of traditional storylines. Movies like Eraserhead and Mulholland Drive echo the disjointed, irrational qualities of surrealist cinema, which still influences filmmakers today. The movement's ability to break away from conventional realism opened new doors for experimental filmmaking and narrative structures. Perhaps one of the most significant aspects of Surrealism's legacy is its continued relevance in contemporary culture. The movement's emphasis on exploring the unconscious, disrupting the status quo, and challenging societal norms resonates with modern movements that push the boundaries of convention, such as postmodernism, cyberpunk, and countercultural art. Surrealism continues to encourage contemporary artists, filmmakers, and writers to explore the limits of human perception and question the assumptions upon which society is built. Ultimately, Surrealism's legacy lies not just in its historical contributions, but in its enduring influence on the way we perceive and interpret reality. Surrealism's impact on contemporary art and culture. Surrealism's influence on contemporary art and culture remains profound, shaping the way modern artists engage with the unconscious, challenge societal norms, and explore new forms of visual and conceptual expression. Emerging in the early 20th century, Surrealism was more than just an artistic movement. It was a radical philosophical stance that sought to disrupt conventional thinking, tapping into the power of dreams, the irrational, and the subconscious. Today, the echoes of Surrealism continue to reverberate across various disciplines, including visual arts, fashion, film, and even digital media. In the realm of visual arts, Surrealism's legacy is evident in the work of contemporary artists who embrace its core principles of spontaneity, imagination, and psychological exploration. Artists such as Jeff Koons, Damien Hirst, and Mark Ryden have incorporated surrealist influences into their works, blending unexpected juxtapositions, dreamlike imagery, and a sense of the bizarre to create art that is both unsettling and thought-provoking. The use of surreal imagery in contemporary art, especially through mixed media, digital manipulation, and installations, reflects Surrealism's continuing relevance in pushing boundaries and exploring the limits of perception. This freedom to subvert the conventional has also given rise to new art movements, such as postmodernism and pop surrealism, which expand on surrealist ideas while incorporating modern influences. In fashion, Surrealism's presence is often seen in the work of designers who embrace the unconventional, using dreamlike elements, distorted proportions, and unexpected materials to create visually striking collections. Designers like Elsa Schiaparelli and Jean-Paul Gaultier have long drawn on surrealist principles, with Schiaparelli famously collaborating with Salvador Dali to create iconic pieces such as the lobster dress. More recently, the works of designers like Rei Kawakubo and Alexander McQueen continue to evoke Surrealism's exploration of the irrational and the fantastical, blurring the lines between fashion and art in ways that challenge traditional notions of beauty and form. In film, Surrealism's influence is pervasive in contemporary cinema, with filmmakers like David Lynch, Terry Gilliam, and Alejandro Jodorowsky continuing to employ dream logic, nonlinear storytelling, and irrational imagery in their work. Films such as Eraserhead, The Holy Mountain, and Mulholland Drive have become cinematic touchstones for exploring the subconscious and defying conventional narrative structures. These films use surrealist techniques to create worlds that invite viewers to question the nature of reality, memory, and identity, much in the same way early surrealist films did. Furthermore, Surrealism's impact extends to contemporary digital and interactive media. Artists and creators in the digital age, including video game designers and VR artists, now use surrealist-inspired methods to craft immersive, fantastical environments that challenge traditional concepts of space, time, and reality. Digital platforms like Instagram and YouTube also serve as spaces for artists to experiment with surreal imagery, blending the dreamlike with the everyday in ways that resonate with a new generation of creators and viewers. In conclusion, Surrealism continues to influence contemporary art and culture by encouraging exploration beyond the rational, embracing the subconscious, and questioning accepted realities. Its radical ideas still serve as a catalyst for innovation in visual arts, fashion, film, and digital media, ensuring that its legacy remains a vital force in shaping the future of creative expression. The persistence of surrealist themes in modern media. Surrealism's themes continue to resonate strongly in modern media, influencing not only visual arts and literature, but also the worlds of film, music, advertising, and digital media. Rooted in the exploration of the unconscious mind, the irrational, and the disruption of logical systems, Surrealism has provided a rich reservoir of ideas that contemporary creators draw upon to challenge traditional modes of storytelling, aesthetics, and expression. These themes are evident in a wide range of modern media, allowing for new interpretations of reality and offering audiences fresh ways to experience and understand the world around them. In film, surrealist themes persist in the works of contemporary directors who explore dream logic, fragmented narratives, and psychological landscapes. Directors such as David Lynch, Terry Gilliam, and Charlie Kaufman continue to craft films that play with the boundaries of reality, often blending the bizarre with the familiar to create experiences that disorient and provoke thought. Lynch's Mulholland Drive and Inland Empire evoke a dreamlike quality where the line between consciousness and subconsciousness becomes blurred, reflecting the surrealist fascination with the irrational and the unknown. Similarly, Kaufman's films, including Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, showcase the persistence of memory and the fluidity of identity, concepts central to surrealist thought. In the realm of music, surrealist themes also make a significant impact. Musicians and composers have long incorporated surreal imagery and ideas into their works, using sound to evoke a sense of disorientation or explore the unconscious. The avant-garde compositions of artists like Frank Zappa and the experimental work of bands such as Pink Floyd draw heavily on surrealist principles, creating music that resists traditional forms and often challenges listeners' perceptions of sound and meaning. The music videos of artists like Björk and Radiohead further showcase the persistence of surrealist aesthetics, using dreamlike visuals and abstract imagery to enhance the emotional and psychological depth of their music. In contemporary advertising and branding, surrealist themes are used to captivate audiences and create memorable, emotionally charged imagery. Surrealist-inspired ads often feature strange juxtapositions, distorted realities, and imaginative scenarios that challenge conventional thinking and grab the viewer's attention. The use of the unexpected in advertising plays on the same principles that surrealists employed to shock, provoke, and elicit deeper engagement with the subconscious. Furthermore, surrealist themes have also permeated digital media, where virtual and augmented realities allow creators to craft immersive environments that play with perceptions of space, time, and identity. Video games, especially those in the art house or experimental genres, often incorporate dreamlike sequences and nonlinear storytelling to create experiences that evoke the subconscious mind. The rise of meme culture has also tapped into surrealist sensibilities, as internet users often juxtapose absurd and unrelated images to generate humor, evoke emotions, or create a sense of the uncanny. Ultimately, the persistence of surrealist themes in modern media highlights the lasting relevance of the movement's exploration of the irrational and the unconscious. These themes continue to inform and shape the creative practices of artists across diverse fields, offering new ways to engage with reality and the complexities of the human experience. Through surreal visuals, narratives, and concepts, contemporary media invites audiences to delve into the deeper layers of perception, imagination, and emotion that surrealism first sought to uncover. Surrealism's influence on popular culture, music, fashion, and design. Surrealism, with its emphasis on the unconscious mind, dreamlike imagery, and the irrational, has had a profound impact on popular culture, influencing a wide array of creative fields including music, fashion, and design. The movement's ability to transcend traditional boundaries and its focus on subverting the ordinary in favor of the extraordinary have left a lasting mark on how we experience and understand modern-day artistic expression. In music, surrealist themes can be seen in the works of numerous musicians and composers who embrace the bizarre, the unexpected, and the psychological. Bands such as Pink Floyd and the Beatles, especially during their psychedelic era, drew on surrealist principles to craft songs that play with surreal soundscapes, distorted realities, and abstract lyrics. Pink Floyd's The Piper at the Gates of Dawn and The Dark Side of the Moon albums are replete with fragmented, dreamlike sequences that mirror the movement's fascination with the unconscious mind and its exploration of reality and perception. Similarly, in the music videos of artists like Björk, David Bowie, and Radiohead, surrealist-inspired visuals often create a sense of altered reality, where the boundaries between the familiar and the strange blur, inviting audiences to explore deeper emotional and psychological themes. Surrealism's influence is also strongly evident in fashion, where designers have long used the movement's dreamlike and fantastical elements to create collections that challenge conventional ideas of beauty and form. Elsa Schiaparelli, a key figure in the early 20th century fashion world, famously collaborated with Salvador Dali to produce iconic surrealist-inspired pieces, such as the lobster dress and the shoe hat, both of which embody the whimsical and irrational aspects of surrealism. In more recent decades, designers like Jean-Paul Gaultier, Alexander McQueen, and Rei Kawakubo have continued to push the boundaries of fashion, incorporating surreal motifs into their work. McQueen's collections often drew on the macabre and the bizarre, challenging societal expectations and inviting viewers to reflect on the juxtaposition of the beautiful and the grotesque, while Gaultier's playful, sometimes absurd designs echo surrealist humor and irreverence. In the world of design, surrealist elements have also found their place in advertising, product design, and architecture. Surrealist-inspired advertising campaigns often use unexpected juxtapositions, illogical compositions, and bizarre imagery to capture attention and provoke thought. These elements not only challenge the conventional methods of selling products, but also invite consumers to engage with the brand on a deeper, more emotional level. Additionally, architects and interior designers frequently draw on surrealism to create spaces that defy the norms of structure and function, focusing on creating experiences that evoke the uncanny and challenge perceptions of space, light, and form. In essence, surrealism's influence on popular culture highlights its enduring power to inspire creativity and break down established norms. Its emphasis on dreamlike imagery, irrationality, and the exploration of the unconscious continues to inform and shape the worlds of music, fashion, and design, offering a fresh lens through which to understand the complexities of the human experience and engage with the world in new and unconventional ways. The continued relevance of surrealism today. Surrealism, which emerged in the early 20th century as a radical artistic and cultural movement, continues to hold significant relevance in contemporary society. Its core ideas of challenging conventional reality, exploring the unconscious mind, and subverting established norms still resonate in various aspects of modern life, from art and literature to cinema and popular culture. As a movement that questioned traditional boundaries and embraced the irrational, surrealism remains a powerful tool for creative expression and a catalyst for new ways of perceiving and engaging with the world. In the realm of art, surrealism's influence remains undeniable. Contemporary artists continue to draw from the movement's exploration of dreams, the unconscious, and the strange, producing works that defy conventional logic and structure. Surrealist-inspired techniques such as automatism and free association are still employed by artists seeking to unlock deeper layers of the psyche or challenge societal norms. Artists like David Lynch, Jeff Koons, and Yayoi Kusama incorporate dreamlike, absurd, and sometimes unsettling imagery into their work, pushing boundaries in much the same way that the Surrealists did. The continued prevalence of surreal aesthetics in modern art highlights how Surrealism's challenge to traditional realism and its embrace of the fantastical continues to inspire innovation and creativity. In literature, Surrealism's impact can be seen in the works of contemporary writers who explore fragmented narratives, dreamlike sequences, and psychological depth. Writers like Haruki Murakami and Jorge Luis Borges often blur the line between the real and the unreal, invoking surrealist themes in their examination of memory, identity, and perception. Surrealist techniques such as automatic writing and the juxtaposition of the mundane with the extraordinary remain central to postmodern literary practices, encouraging new forms of storytelling that transcend the ordinary and explore the subconscious. Cinema also continues to be deeply influenced by surrealism, with directors like David Lynch, Terry Gilliam, and Alejandro Jodorowsky incorporating surreal visuals and narratives into their films. The movement's emphasis on dream logic and irrational storytelling techniques is evident in films like Eraserhead, The Holy Mountain, and Mulholland Drive. These films, often disjointed and nonlinear, invite viewers to question the nature of reality and the human experience, continuing surrealism's legacy of challenging the accepted norms of storytelling. Moreover, surrealism's relevance extends beyond the world of fine arts and entertainment. In the digital age, surrealist themes have found a home in new media, including virtual reality, video games, and digital art. These platforms allow creators to craft environments that push the boundaries of reality, creating experiences that are immersive, strange, and often unsettling. The rise of memes and internet culture also showcases a new generation's embrace of surrealism, with absurd, disconnected images often creating humor or provoking thought through unexpected juxtapositions. In conclusion, surrealism's continued relevance today speaks to its enduring power to inspire, challenge, and provoke. Its focus on the unconscious, the irrational, and the exploration of alternative realities offers a lens through which we can understand the complexities of the modern world. Whether through art, literature, film, or digital media, surrealism remains a vital force in shaping the cultural landscape, encouraging us to look beyond the surface of reality and engage with the mysteries of the mind and imagination. Surrealism in the digital age. In the digital age, surrealism has found new avenues of expression, evolving from its roots in the early 20th century to influence and reshape modern technology, media, and art. While the original surrealists were inspired by the dream world, the unconscious, and the irrational, the digital era has provided artists and creators with new tools to explore these themes in innovative ways. From digital art and virtual reality to social media and video games, surrealism continues to challenge perceptions of reality, pushing boundaries and inviting audiences to experience altered states of consciousness through interactive and immersive technologies. One of the most significant ways surrealism has evolved in the digital age is through digital art. Artists now have access to an endless range of digital tools, enabling them to manipulate and transform images in ways that were unimaginable during the early 20th century. Digital platforms like Photoshop and 3D modeling software allow for the creation of dreamlike, otherworldly imagery, reminiscent of classic surrealist paintings. Artists such as Eric Johansson and Carlos Lascano use these tools to create impossible, fragmented worlds that manipulate space, time, and perception, staying true to the surrealist tradition of defying logic and embracing the irrational. These works invite viewers to engage with distorted realities and explore subconscious narratives through the lens of cutting-edge technology. Virtual reality, VR, and augmented reality, AR, have also become significant mediums for surrealist expression, offering entirely new ways to engage with the surreal. VR allows for the creation of fully immersive, surreal environments where users can experience alternate realities firsthand. Artists and game developers now design VR worlds that challenge the laws of physics and space, offering experiences that are simultaneously disorienting and exhilarating. These digital landscapes often evoke a sense of the uncanny, as users navigate through distorted, dreamlike worlds that seem both familiar and alien. By using VR to place individuals inside surreal scenarios, creators are able to take the surrealist exploration of the mind and consciousness into uncharted territory, making the subconscious experience physically tangible. In social media and digital culture, surrealism has found a unique outlet for self-expression through memes, videos, and visual storytelling. The internet has become a breeding ground for surreal humor, where absurd and disjointed images are juxtaposed to create surreal moments of wit and irony. This practice has allowed surreal aesthetics to infiltrate popular culture, making it more accessible and participatory. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube serve as spaces for digital artists to create and share surreal works, blurring the lines between fine art and mainstream entertainment. Surrealism's continued relevance in the digital age is a testament to its adaptability and enduring power. As digital technologies expand and evolve, the movement's core principles of irrationality, dream imagery, and subconscious exploration offer endless possibilities for artists and creators to push the boundaries of imagination, creating new realities that challenge and captivate audiences in innovative ways. In this sense, the digital age has breathed new life into surrealism, allowing it to thrive in ways that are both groundbreaking and deeply rooted in its original mission to explore the unknown and uncharted territories of the human mind. Chapter 9, Conclusion. Surrealism, a movement born out of the desire to transcend the limitations of reason and reality, has left an indelible mark on art, literature, film, and culture. Emerging in the aftermath of World War I, it sought to break free from the constraints of rational thought and explore the unconscious mind, dreams, and the irrational. Through its radical ideas and avant-garde techniques, Surrealism challenged societal norms, questioning traditional artistic practices and pushing the boundaries of human creativity. Today, the movement's influence is still deeply felt, extending far beyond its original context and continuing to shape contemporary culture in new and unexpected ways. The core of Surrealism lies in its exploration of the unconscious and the pursuit of the extraordinary within the ordinary. Whether through dreamlike imagery, unexpected juxtapositions, or the use of techniques like automatic writing and free association, Surrealist artists and writers sought to tap into a deeper, more instinctive level of creativity. By embracing irrationality, they opened up new possibilities for creative expression that transcended the constraints of everyday life, offering a glimpse into the strange and unfamiliar realms of the human psyche. These principles continue to resonate in today's world, as artists and creators in various fields find inspiration in the surreal to challenge the status quo and express ideas that provoke thought and emotion. In the visual arts, Surrealism's legacy can be seen in the work of contemporary artists who incorporate its dreamlike qualities and experimental techniques. In literature, Surrealist themes continue to inform the works of modern writers who explore fragmented realities and delve into the complexities of memory, identity, and perception. In film, directors draw upon surrealist aesthetics to craft narratives that blur the boundaries between the real and the unreal, pushing the limits of conventional storytelling. Even in digital media, surrealism thrives, with artists using new technologies to create virtual landscapes and interactive experiences that captivate and challenge the viewer's sense of reality. Beyond the arts, surrealism's influence can be seen in popular culture, from fashion and music to advertising and internet memes. The movement's embrace of the irrational, the absurd, and the subconscious has permeated all aspects of modern life, allowing surrealism to maintain its relevance in an ever-changing world. As society continues to grapple with questions of identity, reality, and the nature of human consciousness, surrealism offers a lens through which we can explore the unknown, challenge established norms, and engage with the mysteries of existence. In conclusion, surrealism remains a vital and dynamic force in the creative world. Its ongoing relevance speaks to its ability to inspire, provoke, and challenge, encouraging individuals to think beyond the surface of reality and engage with the deeper layers of the human experience. Through its legacy, surrealism continues to shape how we understand and interact with the world, offering a transformative vision of creativity that will persist for generations to come.